Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight, hopefully, we have guest Gerald Eastwood. He's the author of Beyond the Pentagon UFO Report. It's going to be all about UFOs, past, present, and future, what Gerald's thoughts are on a number of UFO historical things like JFK assassination and Marilyn Monroe, number of different UFO cases, his theory about interdimensional aliens. I've been listening to his podcast on Apple Podcasts. I haven't read the book yet. Very interesting. Actually, kind of a like mind in my sense, how I look at the history of UFOs and the government cover-up. So I can't wait to talk to him. Hopefully, he missed sound check, so hopefully he's here. He'll be here after the World Wide Web of Weird, after our first commercial break. Also having issues with Rob's audio. He's rebooting his computer at the moment. We're hoping he's going to be on here, so I was kind of stalling. Hoping Rob will be on here. Otherwise, I have to run the World Wide Web of Weird. You know how that goes if you've been watching the show over the last few years. I suck at it. So hopefully we get Rob, but we got a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest, Gerald Eastwood, author of Beyond the Pentagon UFO Report, should be joining us, hopefully, after the World Wide Web Weird, after our first commercial break. Joining me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing well, thank you.
And, we see Rob has not made it back yet. He could hear us. We could, he could hear us, right?
No,
he couldn't hear us, but we could hear him. That was right. That was the problem. So Rob's technically rebooting right now, so I better get my... wait. Here's Rob. Let's see. And do you hear us, Rob? And I take it by the no answer yet. He does not hear us? Uh-oh.
If we still hear him, we should still hear the worldwide.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for him to do it without hearing us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know. You there, Rob? All right. I better get my share screen up because he's looking intently.
Can you guys hear me?
I hear you. You hear us?
Yeah, my mixer's not working, so I don't know what's going on, but I got it sort of gathered.
But you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Do you think you can do the World Wide Web of Weird?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
Is there videos with sound? I don't know if it'll work. We'll see.
There is a video with sound in there. I do have it up on mine, but it's not a big deal if we don't have sound with it. You just listen to two stoner girls in Chicago talk about a UFO they saw. It's kind of hilarious. We'll see if we get the audio. Otherwise, I could try to pull it up. I don't know if I get my audio to work on it either because I have issues, but we'll try. So, yeah, if you want to get that share screen up here, we'll go ahead. We got a lot to get to tonight, guys, in the World Wide Web of Weird. So let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, I thought I would start off, of course, with what everybody's been talking about. His Captain Kirk finally went to space. Yes, he went to space. William Shatner journeys to space on Blue Origin rocket. And a big penis rocket, he went up into space. But you know, as a kid, I watched all the original series, reruns. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Everybody knows I watches the show. I love Star Trek. And I think this is awesome. I don't care what the critics say. I think it's awesome that William Shatner went to space. Captain Kirk got to see from space. And yes, he's an astronaut. They're not going to even try to argue that, right? No. For those listening on the Paranormal Soup radio network, we are a webcast. You can watch us on YouTube, Facebook, or even Twitch. We're on Twitch as well. All right, but what I wanted to talk about is who decided to take this picture before they went up into space and put the rest of the crew in red jacket shirts or whatever, red shirts, and Kirk in his yellow. I mean, I get it, but I don't know if these astronauts know they're all doomed. They made it back. They're fine. But when I first saw this before they launched, I'm like, you're all gonna die, except for Kirk. You know, total red shirts. But this is from Coast to Coast. Beloved Hollywood icon William Shatner made his history earlier today. This is, of course, a few days ago, when he journeyed into space aboard Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket. A highly anticipated event saw Star Trek's famed Captain Kirk join 3 other individuals who participated in the private company's second such mission. The flight reportedly lasted approximately 10 minutes and allowed the crew to experience around 4 minutes of weightlessness before the craft safely landed back on Earth. By reaching an altitude of 66 miles, which crossed the official barrier of space, the 90-year-old actor is now the oldest person ever to pull off such a remarkable feat. Captain Kirk, man, all the way. I don't care. I saw people are criticizing it. I'm like, come on, man. Lighten up. Captain Kirk went to space. It's a big moment. The video of him talking about it is awesome. I also like the suck it Picard thing. I don't know if he really held that up, but I've seen the meme of that. I hope he did. Even though I love Picard, don't get me wrong, I think it's awesome. All right, let's move on. So Kirk goes into space, and now we got Demi Lovato. You know, we've talked about her before, and her and joining Stephen Greer's cult. Demi Lovato says calling extraterrestrials aliens is offensive. This is from Rolling Stone. We know how great journalism they got. Demi Lovato has said referring to extraterrestrials as aliens is derogatory, and the word should no longer be used for potential otherworldly visitors. They'll be offended. And then Rolling Stone, your article sucks. You're not gonna let me read it? Read full story. Oh, well, now it won't let me read it. I have my one free pass. I don't need to read it. I've seen it, but basically she's like, you know, somebody asked her, you know, about a song that's coming up named Aliens, and she's like, oh no, we would never name a song Aliens. It's offensive.
Everything's offensive.
Yeah, I don't think the aliens give a crap, honestly, Debbie. No. I don't know what Stephen Greer's, Kool-Aid is.
They probably look at Earth in general as offensive.
Yeah, I think our whole existence and, all the movies out there, I'm sure we've done enough to piss off the aliens. I mean, nuclear weapons. I mean, I think the least of their concerns is that we call them aliens.
Yeah.
I would believe so, Demi. But maybe she's down, you know, at the taco shop, taco fan.
Yeah.
With Miley Cyrus.
Miley.
I don't know. Hey, you know, I like I said, I hate to make fun of Demi Lovato. It's great to see stars come out and talk about their experiences or beliefs or interest in this. It's great. We need more inclusion and openness, and I shouldn't make fun of Demi Lovato. But I'm going to make fun of Demi Lovato.
Yeah.
I find Demi Lovato offensive.
There you go.
Just, tell me not, that, we got to be all social justice warrior on the aliens now. I don't think they care.
PC correct to our ETs.
Yeah. And if they're taking people, see, that's the theme of the whole aliens are good and peaceful. We need to treat them such and blah, blah, blah. I don't buy that when I have friends that have been abducted. And I've had my own experiences against their will, against their wishes. Maybe they in past life chose this. I don't know. But in the end, it's still taking people against their current incarnation's will. And not good if that's the case, if that's happening, which I believe it is. I totally believe it is. So Demi Lovato can suck it. Aliens don't like me calling them aliens. They can suck it. But let's move on. Maybe they're trying to send us a signal from the Galactic Center. That's our next story. From physics.org, I thought this was interesting. Strange radio waves emerged from the direction of the Galactic Center. Astronomers have discovered unusual signals coming from the direction of the Milky Way's center. The radio waves fit no currently understood pattern of variable radio source and could suggest a new class of stellar object. The strangest property of this new signal is that it has a very high polarization. This means that the light oscillates in only one direction, but that direction rotates with time, said Zitling Wang, lead author of the new study and a PhD student in the School of Physics at the University of Sydney. The brightness of the object also varies dramatically by a factor of 100, and the signal switches on and off apparently at random. We've never seen anything like it. Many types of star emit variable lights across the electromagnetic spectrum. With tremendous advances in radio astronomy, the study of variables or transit objects in the radio waves is a huge field of study, blah, blah, blah. This article goes on, like I said, physics.org, check it out. But what I think of is like contact. Maybe those signals and missions, maybe it's we can translate it. I don't It's just a signal, computer code, binary. I don't know. Or it's just random. We just found something new in the vastness of space, which is more likely.
Run it through a computer program. Maybe they can figure out a pattern to it, like a Morse code.
That's what my sci-fi Carl Sagan contact fan brain puts to it. It's like, come on, let's run this through some super AI. Maybe it's a message. Or it's just the randomness of space, and we just found something new, which there's going to be tons of that when space is huge and vast, and there's a lot of things out there I'm sure we don't understand. But I find it interesting. It comes from the center of the galaxy. I don't know. Might be interesting. Science wants to know. All right, let's move on. What do I got next? Okay, this is the one with the audio. I don't know. I mean, I might be able to pull it up, but I have trouble with audio too. It's not a big deal to have the audio. I should say, it's like I said, it's two stoner girls looking at this UFO. Going, whoa, what is that? Oh my God. They're on a rooftop in Chicago. All right. A peculiar piece of footage from Chicago shows a truly bizarre wishbone-like UFO hovering in the sky as the witnesses watching it struggle to comprehend what they are seeing. This is from PNN News. The weird video was reportedly filmed last month by a woman named Anya, and she and her son stood atop the roof of their home, observing the unusual flying object. It sounds like two women talking. She said her son's up there, but literally have no idea what it is. There is nothing comparable, she said, recounting how I felt totally confusion and a bit creeped out as the eerie sighting unfolded. I really think it was the pot, but at the end in the video, Anya and her son can be heard. I guess it's her son. I thought it was two chicks. Sorry. Nervously laughing about the odd UFO and wondering what it could be before he muses, let's think logically about this. Despite that appeal to reason, the young man fails to come up with an explanation for the strange object. I don't know what this is. Go ahead and roll that beam footage, and I don't know. Yeah, there's audio.
Do you hear any audio?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, cool.
It's really low.
Is it a balloon falling out of the sky?
Some people speculated it could be a balloon, but if you get out, we'll get to the zoom in on it. I don't know if you want to fast forward to the zoom in on it. I got a zoom in of it. I don't know. The balloon would kind of sway or make some other movement. It almost just hangs in the air. I thought, is it clouds and the top of a building? but I'd have to know where they shot this at and where this is at, you know.
It could be. Like, it's not a lighthouse.
Yeah, but obviously they would recognize it, that they live there and they're on top of that roof. They would know it was a building there, I would think. So
Yeah,
I
they're
kind of
also
ruled that
stoned.
out. Right.
I mean, right there, it looks like, you know, it's like almost like a loop, like a big U shape or something.
Yeah. I really zoom in on the end if you want to fast forward. Go to the end. I don't know. I don't know what that is, if it's a balloon or what. I think it's on his video. I don't
Or a
think shenanigans.
kite, a piece of a kite. I think it's just something that went up and it's just slowly falling back down.
I don't know. It's big. It looks pretty big up there. Doesn't look like it'd be a normal balloon. It's a bit odd. Seems like that'd be a lot of weight under it for a small balloon. Like, because whatever is above it, it's not very big to hold it or float. There's a lot there hanging. So it's hard for me to picture that being a balloon. You know?
Or
I
some
would think
sort
it'd have
of
to be a lot
kite
bigger
part.
balloon. Yeah, I don't know.
Because they have some
It
extravagant.
hangs there for quite a while. So I'm at a loss.
Well, if the air is just right and looks cloudy and stuff, the moisture could, science.
Science the hell out of it.
Science.
I don't know.
No, it is interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one, and
I've flown
rooftops of
kites all over
Chicago.
the world, and
I would-
I've never seen kites like that.
yeah, nothing like I've seen. So I don't know. I think these girls got something, or
It's
girl and her son.
wicked.
It sounded like two girls talking. The audio, I don't know. I could barely hear it, but don't worry about it.
Anthony says it's Demi Lovato. David said it's Squid Game.
Oh, don't, jeez.
It's part of the taco truck.
I don't know what it is. I've looked at it 1,000 times. I don't know. I'm not an expert, though. Let's move on. All right, this next story just came out recently from the New York Post, and I find this story kind of bizarre. It's not paranormal, but archery champ accused of stabbing lover's teen stepson to death in a occult murder. Yeah, it's from October 15th. A sports star allegedly stabbed her lover's teen stepson to death in an occult murder after trying to cut a pentagram into his back. Maria Kormiva, 29, a three-time archery biathlon champion, has been detained over the death of her lover's 15-year-old stepson, Roman Fedevlov, if I said that right. Her boyfriend, Vladsilov Tiskanov, I'm probably butchering that, 52, has also been arrested. He claimed Kormiva intended to frighten the teenage boy with a wrench and use a knife to cut a ritualistic symbol on his back, but she killed him instead. Fedorov's body was found hidden in an abandoned well in a forest near the village of Zemenki in Russia on Wednesday. On October 8th, Tistinov, or if you say his name, was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping his stepson, according to reports citing law enforcement. He had divorced Fededlov's mother before he started dating Kormiva. Reportedly, he became interested in the occult, supernatural beliefs and practices and wanted to use it to get back with his ex-wife, Alina Fedlov. I have other pictures you want to roll through here. There's a post that she made on social media before she took down all of her social media when this all came out. A message from Maria Kermroff, now deleted social media, said, "Those who have seen darkness once will never believe in the light." That's her post there. Cute picture, but she killed a boy. She took the knife to draw a pentagram. I told her to watch out and not to kill him. She said she only stunned him. Tiskanov claimed he was waiting in a car at the time of the killing. He said she ran back with her eyes wide open, saying, "I killed him." Sounds like he spilled the beans and is telling the whole story here. What's she have to say? I want to know. I said, "Okay, I'm in shock." He said he went to investigate and found the boy dead with 2 stab wounds. Bloodstains were later found on his sneakers, according to sources. So, yeah, he went into the scene, disposed of the body, covered it up. He also manipulated the surveillance cameras. There's the jerk. And this 15-year-old's dead. I'm not saying because people are into a cult, they do horrible things. Of course not. I have my wife into a cult. Oh, everybody I know into a cult, but some people get really deep into it and become dangerous and psychotic, and they use it to manipulate people like this. Well, she's only, 29, I said? So she's not a young girl, but she's obviously stupid. I don't know. He's sure blaming it all on her. I feel like he had more to be involved with. But, they call this a ritualistic killing. I want to know what her intent was. Like, besides drawing a pentagram to get back at his ex-wife, on this boy's back what the purpose of that was. She didn't intend to kill him. You know, what's up with the wrench and the knife? Are you going to knock him out and then try to carve it in, and then you got a little carried away? Yeah, evil can look cute.
Something
The
don't
Manson
add
murders.
up.
She looks like she's
Yeah,
about
something don't
14.
add up, but there's something wrong with her. Oh, what did
I
they say?
see the evil in her face.
Yeah,
right
this
there.
is what. Wait, no, listen to this. What they said. Let me find it about what her own teammates said about her coach or somebody. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see.
Is that her in this photo here?
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Sources at Carmina's former sports club said Maria set a goal and walked towards it in a cold-blooded way, adding she worked and worked and worked. She was driven. Psychotics usually are. Yeah. That poor, it's sad. This poor kid's dead, and this girl's life is ruined, and this dating at 29 with a 50-year-old. That's the poor kid that was killed, only 15. So I hope they throw the book at both of them, or at least investigate it. I feel like he's getting to throw the whole book, throw her under the bus when he had more involvement. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Armchair
Looks
detective.
a bit crazy.
Yeah, he looks like he's into the occult. I can see that. It's the turtleneck.
Yeah, turtleneck does it.
And the very short crop receding hairline thing, I don't know, and the evil like half eyebrows. Yeah, he's got the evil look. I can see it. All right, let's move on. Because we're gonna run out of time. Oh yeah, we're already running out of time. Shoot. Where am I at? That was Article 6. All right, experts shocked. I'm not, because I've been calling this. By military robo-dog with sniper rifle attachment. This is from futurism.com. You can check it out because I won't have time to read the whole article. This crosses a moral, legal, and technical line, taking us to a dark and dangerous world, titles the article. Yesterday, we reported that the military hardware company Ghost Robotics had debuted a robot dog with attached sniper rifle. Now, experts are speaking out against the heavily armed robo-dog, which they say marks an inflection point in the development of killer robots and should represent an urgent opportunity to reflect on whether the tech should be allowed at all. You think the military has not already done all this?
Yeah.
Just don't know about it. This crosses a moral, legal, and technical line, taking us into a dark and dangerous world. UNSW Sydney AI professor Toby Walsh told Futurism, such weapons will be used by terrorists, what have I said? And rogue states, they will be weapons of terror. What have I said? I agree 100%. I've said it on the show like a billion times now. Walsh also pointed out that while it's not clear how much autonomy Ghost Robodog currently has, world militaries are already blurring the line between deadly drones controlled by human operators and ones with autonomous killing capabilities. In particular, he pointed out to an incident in November of last year in which an Israeli operative assassinated an Iranian scientist using an AI-assisted robot machine gun. I only hope it adds urgency to the ongoing discussion at the UN to regulate the space and quietens those voices saying the technology is a long way off. Oh, no, right. It is not a long way off. They're already doing it. I showed videos, years ago, of Russia with their Terminator robot with a pistol, like bam, 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 bam. I mean, what if I keep on saying? They're going to replace all of us with robots.
That was like 3 or 4 years ago already, I think.
Yeah, why do they need? They don't need law enforcement or people. It's the scenario RoboCop. Look how much, what's going on right now. What's been going on for the last 4 or 5 years.
Getting rid of our law enforcement, too.
Yeah, they'll have robo-dogs and robo-cops, and they'll all have guns, and they'll do whatever they ask.
Already, they have the retina reading mechanism in the body cameras. If you look at that, it can run your retina and pull up your records. They can detain you on the sidewalk.
They already started doing robotic, on wheels and drones, telling people to go inside during the coronavirus lockdowns. They've already done this. They're already there. They're already hitting there, man. RoboCop's playing out. People, they're just waiting for the guns to get put on the robots, and here we are.
And they did have the dogs. They had the robot dogs that were going around.
They had robot dogs from military.
Inside.
Yeah. You're right. They did. Yeah, that was creepy. All right. Well, last up, just for even more great current news, is Chinese have now, this is from New York Post, Chinese say a new hypersonic missile, a blow to U.S. strategic superiority. And other articles like U.S. military or DOD or U.S. intelligence surprised. Why are they surprised? Are they not doing their job? I wonder why. What's been going on? because this is a bit of a crap show. If you didn't know this was coming, or see it, or have any intelligence on this, I have to question your abilities, because this is super serious, super serial, people. Man, bear, pig. No, more like China having nuclear hypersonic glide missiles that can literally hang out in the sky, change directions, hard to detect, hard to evade, they can evade very easily, and can't be shot down by us now. Now, it missed its mark by like 2 miles, but that's, still hit a mark. And if it had a nuclear bomb on it, it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, really.
What have I been saying? Everybody's been like, Russia, Russia, Russia. Yes, Russia's an enemy and not a friend, and we need to be caring. But what have I been saying? China, China, China. We need to watch our backs. They are up to no good. They're making moves in the East China Sea, and we are fighting amongst ourselves. And
in space.
Yeah, and in space. But this is the biggest game changer. That means our mutually assured destruction is not so mutually assured, and that's a big issue.
Not to mention they're reverse engineering all the stuff from Afghanistan that they got their hands on.
And why are we surprised that they have this technology? Did they somehow get our technology?
Yeah.
Do we have traitors in our midst? I think so.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, just even your mainstream media has had to admit all the Chinese spying that's been going on in this country the last 5-6 years or longer. I mean, there's major headline stories about this. Just, it gets buried by all the other stupid stuff as we argue amongst ourselves. Our main enemy here is, they got an AI system called Skynet, all right, and they have a social credit system. They have everything. They are the evil empire, and we need to be concerned. I know, here I am on my soapbox, but that's it for the World Wide Web of Weird. Not to frighten you. We'll get into, hopefully, the UFO topic with our guest, Gerald Eastwood, but we're going to go to commercial break, and when we return, we'll talk about his book, Beyond the Pentagon UFO Report, when we come back.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hopson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. of the third kind, Certificate A, now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
The international chart-topping, Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, best-selling author G.L. Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest, the true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS ranging.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe, 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Gerald Eastwood, author of Beyond the Pentagon UFO Report. Gerald was born in Louisville and attended Midwestern University. At the university, he became interested in astronomy as a hobby and took all available courses. As another pastime in college, he obtained a commercial pilot's license. His interest and background in science led him to pursue the most powerful story of our time, UFOs and the mystery behind them. Bringing together his natural research and his writing talents, he produced a trilogy of books, Surviving the Deep State under the pen name Murray Taylor. Realizing the impact of how intelligence agencies actually operate, this led him to formulate the plan to write Beyond the Pentagon UFO Report, in which he takes analysis of the government documents and private cases to support the assertion that the government knows far more than they claim regarding the UFO topic. He's also the stepson of John Stinger, who took the JFK autopsy photos at the Bethesda Naval Hospital. He has a high-level knowledge of the JFK conspiracy as well. You know I want to talk about that. There's a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Now, tonight I have our guest on a different phone line than I usually have guests on. Hopefully this is fine, and we will give out the phone lines later for you to call on the show, which will be different than the normal phone line. So just remember, if you do plan on calling in later tonight, pay attention. I will get those phone lines out to you. It's not going to be the usual two when we have a guest on phone. It's going to be the other two. Well, I'll get to all that later when we go to the next commercial break. But here with us, hopefully, is our guest, Gerald. How you doing tonight, Gerald?
Hi, Jason. Good evening to you and to your listeners.
Good evening. It's an honor to have you on. I haven't read the book, but I actually been listening to a lot of your podcasts on Apple Podcasts, and there's a lot I want to get into tonight. I feel like you're a soul brother in the when it comes to the history of UFOs and that, because you have a lot of takeaways that I do from past cases, and I'd love to get into tonight your theories on them being interdimensional, because that's something I talk about a lot on this show, and my thoughts on that. I want to talk about the JFK assassination and Marilyn Monroe. There's so much to get to, but to start off, I kind of want to know about you. What really pushed you to pursue this topic?
Well, I don't know. It's just I've always been interested in history, mysteries, conspiracy, and the universe. And it's UFOs are sort of a combination of all of these things. I did have one personal experience some years ago. I had a second home on top of a 5,000-foot mountain range, and I happened to see a couple of silver discs in the distance, and they eventually passed out of sight, and about less than a minute later, maybe 45 seconds later, a couple of fighter jets passed 150 feet, no more than 100 feet overhead. So I don't know what that was all about, but that's the only personal level of background I have on it.
Yeah, I mean, I had my first really major sighting when I was like 16, and it was major. It was a huge UFO. It flew over the heads of me and my friends downtown Michigan City, Indiana, where I'm at. And then I've had other weirdness I'm trying to figure out in my life when it comes to this. But for myself, like you, I've always had an interest since I can remember, like earliest memories. I've always been fascinated by UFOs. Maybe it's the Star Trek in me. I don't know. But I've always believed that they're real, even before I saw my first one.
Well, yeah, and my book goes way beyond the basic Pentagon UFO report. As John Lear and others says, it's a very super light document. It's almost irrelevant. Now, I also tie in my book UFOs, with the rise of the deep state, government secrets. Is this good versus evil on a cosmic scale? Third and fourth kinds of encounters to cover-ups, deaths associated with the UFO phenomena, as well as all the cast of characters involved. So it's on Amazon. It's called Beyond the UFO, Beyond the Pentagon UFO Report by Gerald Eastwood.
Yeah, I got it. The cover of it up here on the screen for people to see, and it's a Kindle edition, so you guys can pick it up pretty easily. My feelings. We talked about the Pentagon UFO report, and my takeaway from it was yes, we know there's something. They're real. There's something to it. 2, we don't know what they are, and 3, give us more money. Because somebody was just talking about a comment, because I was talking about China and their super hypersonic missile that just, the news came out today that they have, and somebody goes, it's fear porn. And you're right, it is fear porn. It's going to, they're like, we had no idea, our DOD and our intelligence agencies, like, we had no idea China had this. Give us more money. It's along the same lines.
Yeah, all the big powers now have these hypersonic missiles, Russia, China, the U.S. So if there ever is a nuclear war, it's going to happen. But that's a whole different story. We've manufactured 70,000 nuclear weapons.
That's it, man. Game over. That's it, man. That's it, man. Game over, man.
Sorry, I had to get my Hudson. But it is. I mean, we're screwed. I mean, my takeaway, with the alien, we get into the history of UFOs. Their interest in nuclear missile silos and our nuclear technology is, to me, a key point. I mean, if they're here to invade us or whatever, I would think we'd be screwed. But the fact that they are fearful of, or I would say have to be fearful for the actions they've taken out, openly actions against our nuclear arsenal, like, shutting down nuclear weapons, has to say a lot about, their fear of what we're doing on this planet with, the possibility of a nuclear war.
Yeah, there was a incident out in Vandenberg base out in California years ago.
Yeah.
And there's a YouTube video on it. And as you know, it disabled the missile while it was traveling at almost 12,000 miles per hour.
Yeah. And isn't there supposedly, secret footage out there of like the actual seeing the UFO like come up and zip up and like shoot like a beam at it or something like that? I remember.
It shot something at it, according to the photographer.
Yeah. The fact that they were able to, what is the famous case where, is it Maelstrom? Where they shut down the whole nuclear arsenals at the silo, like separate missiles, all in different separate systems, and was able to shut them all down. I mean, like I said, game over. we don't have a shot. But the fact that they were that bold, like of doing that in both those instances, to me says a lot about their fear. Like they have a stake in what happens here. Then obviously.
Yeah, there's a lot of government secrecy. You know, you go back to talking about nuclear, the Manhattan Project,
right.
many years ago. There were 200,000 people involved. It had a budget in current day dollars of $38 billion to produce these atomic and hydrogen bombs, and less than maybe 100 people knew everything. Were at the top. Everybody else was need to know. So 200,000 people knew about, were working for it, but less than 100 people at the top really had an oversight. And in fact, President Truman didn't know anything before he was the president. And his science advisor finally said, you know, by the way, Mr. President, we have an atomic bomb and a hydrogen on the way. And he said, what? You know, nobody had ever told him. It was all need to know. And that's what's going on with these stories.
It reminds me of Jimmy Carter trying to get out of CIA Chief Bush information about UFOs, and he says, well, you don't have a need to know. You know, as plain as that, shut him down.
Has no need to know. As a rule, they do not.
Most people believe, oh, the president's going to know everything, right? The president's going to get the classified files and the talk to about the gray aliens they caught at Roswell, and he's going to get all that information. What I've always found interesting about that is I think that was the case early on, you know, and that's why I want to talk about JFK tonight. All the stuff he was in knowledge of that might have, you know, been reason for his assassination, and the Marilyn Monroe connection. I've always been fascinated by that. And then you look at like Nixon, who would have had knowledge because of being VP during Eisenhower, had, you know, knowledge of the UFOs. You would think, you know, after, I mean, and he supposedly, I don't know if you know the story where he told Jackie Gleason, he was a little loose-lipped about it, if that's a true story. You know, that probably after Kennedy and Nixon with Jackie Gleason and Marilyn Monroe and them telling people, they're probably like, yeah, let's not tell presidents anymore about the aliens.
You just hit it on the head right there.
I mean, they're national security threats. I mean, do you think the Gleason story about Nixon's true?
Well, very possible. Very possible. I think in the '60s, I think it was common knowledge.
Yeah.
I think after that they shut it down. I think Nixon obviously knew because of his connection with Eisenhower and how he was debriefed by certain principals of Area 51 that Eisenhower sent out there to Area 51 to investigate. Nixon and Eisenhower knew everything.
Right.
Kennedy, for some reason, was able to, I think, discover the truth about Roswell. Beyond that, I don't know how much the presidents were shared with.
Right. I mean, and Kennedy was, when he came in, would have been somewhat of an outsider. You know, it seems to be, you know, I mean, we're talking about Republican administrations that had the control of the UFO information at the time. Here he comes in, a young Democrat president, fairly, you know, youngest at that time. And, you know, a bit of an outsider. You know, you'd think they might keep it away from him if they, you know, if they were able to, but maybe at that time there wasn't the rules in place that they have now, that he did get access somehow or demanded it. I don't know.
10 days before he was assassinated, he issued an order or an office memo, you probably know this, that he was going to share everything with Khrushchev. So this, again, this was against the establishment. Yeah,
they already felt betrayed, you know, how him and Robert handled the Cuban Missile Crisis. The deal under the table they made with Russia. The military already felt betrayed by that, and they looked at them as Russian assets at that point. You know, they basically gave away the bacon to Russia, agreeing to take down our nuclear, our what we were going to arm Turkey, and we agreed to pull out those nuclear missile installations there. They were just, in all fair, they were putting nuclear missiles in Cuba because we were putting them in Turkey, you know, and that was the deal. And the military was not happy. The military was full blown ready to go to a nuclear war.
LeMay was ready, absolutely.
Yeah, what, Curtis LeMay, was that the general?
Curtis, absolutely.
Yeah, Curtis LeMay, yeah. He totally wanted to go to war. I mean, and I think, you know, personally, I think the rumors are that he hated the Kennedys with a passion, felt that they were traitors. And then you see Howard Hunt on his, did you ever see those deathbed confessions of Howard Hunt?
I'm very familiar. I know all about Howard Hunt. I know all about his son, I think it's called Saint so and so Hunt.
Yeah.
And I know about his mother. The whole family is fascinating,
isn't it? I mean, look at his mother, how she died. It's like something out of the movies. I mean, if you look at Howard Hunt's life, it's incredible. It's incredible. And then for him to say what he did before he died, I mean, basically gloating that they killed Kennedy. And that he was a Russian traitor or asset, that he was proud of what they did.
Yeah, he was, and of course, as you know, he was connected to the company. The CIA was part of the sector there, the Far Eastern group or whoever that initiated it.
Yeah, I mean, and where did he take his orders from for Watergate? From the Nixon administration. Again, on the Republican. I hate both parties, just so people know. But at that time period, we're talking historically, the beginning of the alien phenomenon from Roswell is a Republican kind of control, if you look at it. And here comes the Democrat wing into it, and all these different senators are they act like they're in different parties, but they're all working together to do the same damn thing, screw us over. But there is some, I always say the bad guys never play nice with each other, and I think there was a lot of information and power control going on behind the scenes. Is my feeling.
Oh, absolutely. The average congressman doesn't know a whole lot, but the very top people in Washington know everything, and it's secret meetings, and they've got plans as to what they're going to do next year and what they're not going to do next year. But right now, it appears to, as you say, I'm an independent also. I have no party affiliation.
Yeah.
But I think we might be headed towards a point where where legislation is almost impossible at this point to pass by either party in Congress. And there could be a problem with raising the debt ceiling again, and there could be all sorts of repercussions.
I mean, the Republicans already said they're not going to do it. They pretty much already said it. But then again, I don't trust Republicans to keep their damn word on a damn thing either. So we'll see. Or Democrats. I don't trust either party. I don't know why people do. I think there's plenty of history to back it up that they're either one of them have done as much good.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. The drama is free, I suppose, you might say. So it's fun to watch.
Well, that's the thing. It's fun to watch, and it's a big distraction. Like, think about it, Gerald. If the whole supposed UFO disclosure that we've been seeing the last few years happened 15 years ago. Let's put it 15 years ago. Maybe even longer, before 9/11. Imagine the 90s during, this came out, and it was on major mainstream media. People's minds would have been blown. You know what I'm saying? Now, everybody's so distracted with so much useless nonsense that it's like, oh, there might be aliens. The government knows. Okay. What are the Kardashians doing? What am I outraged about right now? We're all distracted by nonsense. This should be the biggest story out there.
You're right. If you dig deep enough into the UFO story, you'll know the secret about everything. That is correct.
Well, I've laughed at the UFO report by them because I see it as an information power grab by those within the government that don't have access to the secret knowledge about UFOs. I think there are parties on, not talking about Republican or Democrat, but political people that have been in politics that sell information, want information. And a big piece of information they haven't been able to get their hands on is the UFO information. I think that there's a good possibility a lot of when it comes to the UFO, the deep state of it, it's passed down by family members to other family members, people that can be trusted. And there's outsiders who are very powerful in the political world, I won't say who like to sell information, or traders. And they would love to have their information, this kind of information. And they put their political operatives out there to start this UFO disclosure project to kind of push their agenda to get that information.
Right. What are we not being told?
Right.
I'm sure you know Robert Bigelow, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
The ranch and all that.
I mean, he came all out about it. Mostly.
He's a major player, and Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. If your readers are interested or your listeners are interested, Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Google Chris Marks.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a number of reports while at the ranch, some as frequently as every day. Paranormal episodes, apparitions, photographic images.
Bigelow owned it for a long time.
Yeah, he doesn't own it now, right?
No.
But he did for about 20 years.
Yeah. And that he's a little bit of a billionaire hero of mine for the stuff he's interested in. And his newest thing is to studying the afterlife after his wife passed away. It's another interest of mine. The guy's after my heart, for his interest. But it's, I've always said about the UFO field, or what the government knows, it's moved into the private sector. And I think that was Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex. I think he knew he lost control of one of the most major events of humankind of technology. It was funneled out to private sector, so the Congress and the Senate can't look into it or find out.
Yeah, and occasionally even the generals. I mean, you look at LeMay, Curtis LeMay. I think under Kennedy, I believe under the early years of Kennedy, or maybe it was the latter years of Eisenhower, I forget.
Yeah.
But he sent 1,000 B-52 bombers to the coast of Russia, and there was no intention to attack. He just wanted to scare them. So, yep. I mean, there's things going on.
I mean, he was obviously pushing us. LeMay was crazy, in my opinion. Just historically, if you look at the things he did, he was trying to push us to a nuclear war. We could win it. We had to do it before they could get opportunity to, mutual assured destruction. We could take them out. That's dangerous. It was a dangerous time. It's an interesting period in history when it comes to, the Kennedys and their struggles with the intelligence, the CIA, the mafia connections. Then you get into what the military-industrial complex has got going on. And then you get the whole alien factor, and then it gets really complicated. One of the things I listened to your podcast about was the Marilyn Monroe, murder, basically. Because that's how I've always felt about Marilyn Monroe's death. We've all heard the rumors that she was going to come out. She had learned a bunch of stuff from Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy, even concerning aliens. And her whole house was wiretapped, and that her death is very suspect. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because that's something I've always been fascinated by.
Sure. Well, the unusual thing is, of course, she was supposed well, first of all, the autopsy report was what? Probable suicide. Well,
yeah.
I listened to some forensic scientists, and they say that classification simply does not exist.
Right. It's either or.
It's impossible. And what they never found, first of all, she didn't vomit up any of these pills. They didn't find any of the yellow coloration on her stomach, which means it had to enter via another method, and therefore it was not taken voluntarily. She was in a staged position, and she was actually on the phone with you might call it a boyfriend,
personal friend at least.
A personal friend. To 10 o'clock that night, and they were talking, and she said, "There's a lot of noise at the front door. Just hold on." And apparently she left and checked on it, and click, about a minute later, the phone hung up. Talked to her again, and whatever started then, but it wasn't reported for 5 or 6 hours later.
Right.
So I don't think Kennedy himself, Robert Kennedy, I believe he was probably there much
He was
earlier.
definitely tied up in it. I mean, there's witnesses to him there.
He was absolutely there at some point that day.
Yeah.
But I believe, and you just look at the credibility. There's a individual in Tampa who was associated with the outfit, whose nephew later wrote a book. And the credibility of the book is very high.
Yeah.
And he said that he had been contacted by the CIA to do away with Mrs. Monroe, and the reason was not given. But I think it was because she knew too much. She knew too many state secrets, and some of those secrets, if revealed, could have violated national security for the president and could have destroyed the Kennedy dynasty. That's what I think.
Well, could they use that, like somebody like LeMay, like in a secret tribunal, to say that Kennedy was a traitor, in a number of ways, talking to Marilyn Monroe, giving her state secrets, her threatening to come out as a security risk, and they get permission to basically, in secret, take her out and take him out.
Exactly, 100%. It was a very conservative elite group. My stepfather, John Stringer,
right.
took the JFK autopsy photos, and I don't know if you've ever heard the story. Some people have, most people haven't, of Lieutenant Commander William Bruce Pitzer. He worked with John. He was also a photographer. He took a video of the autopsy. John took the still photos and the brain sections, and he had custody of Kennedy's brain actually for a while until it went missing. But in any case, but William Pitzer was murdered shortly, a couple of years after the assassination, right before he was going to retire. He was in a great mood. He was happy. Basically, he was going to, I think, use the video to propel himself in the media world after he took his retirement from the Navy. And John walked into his office one day and said that his head was on the desk, and there was a gun in his hand, but it was the wrong hand. He was left-handed.
Right, put in the right. Yep, that's
and so forth. And he basically was gone, and the video, of course, was gone forever. And there was a ladder parked right next to his desk, which led up to a crawl space where the video had been stored. So it was almost like, we got it. We just want to let you know we got it. Very strange.
Better shut your mouth. Basically, what would be the reason though? I've heard the speculations, but for them wanting to, if it's John F. Kennedy assassinated and here's the videotape, what would have been on that videotape to prove that their narrative about the assassination was wrong?
That's a very good question. You're referring to the actual. It's kind of complicated, but you're referring to the autopsy findings.
Right, exactly.
Let me just tell you this: that when John Stringer, you go forward a little bit in history to the 1970s, and they had the Select Committee on Assassinations.
Right.
And at that point, they resurrected the photos. And they showed them to John, and he said, I never saw these before.
They're not the same photos.
So they substituted them. Yeah.
Some people had to say it had to do with, like, the entry and exit wounds. Is it along those lines? Like, because there's been the speculation that that one of the person in the back seat, the Secret Service, shot him.
Yeah, that's a very good book. I've read that, and it's a very interesting theory that one of the Secret Service accidentally fired the fatal headshot in the motorcade. I think it's called, I forget the name of the book offhand. I've read it years ago. In any case, there's been about 1,000 books written, and about 80% of them tend towards conspiracy, which I think 80% of the population believes it was. And in terms of what happened that day, I think there were probably 7 to 10 shots fired from at least 4 directions.
Yeah, it was a Cuban, according to Howard Hunt, it was Cubans. And they did a triangle formation that they had used before in other assassinations. He was just there as backup. That was the Howard Hunt story, if I remember right. So that would have definitely included at least 3 shooters. And then, of course, Oswald.
Right. They took a picture of Hunt. He was one of the tramps, I believe.
Yeah. And there was another other people in the picture, too, identified, too, but not just Hunt.
Yeah, 2 others, and it's very interesting who they may or may not have been. But there was also a picture of a guy at the base of the depository building, which looked an awful lot like George H.W. Bush.
Yes.
Now, he called in to the FBI about an hour and a half after the assassination from Tyler, Texas, which is about an hour and a half away.
Right.
And said, by the way, I want to report what I think is a suspicious individual. It was nothing.
Yeah.
But he said, I knew somebody that knew somebody or whatever that you should investigate about this whole thing. So he was placing himself away from Dallas, but he was in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, the theories I've heard is that, I have a big interest in the Bush family and their long, sordid history. And at that time for George Bush, he was in the oil business, right?
Zapata.
Right. But the oil business was totally tied up in the CIA and has been, along with the drug business and a number of the things that the Bushes have been involved in for a long time. And some say he got to his position because he helped coordinate the JFK assassination.
Well, I'll tell you a very interesting story, and I don't know if it's true or not. And I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I have no.
It's all
as the White House
speculation.
would say. It's all speculation. But I have a friend who was who worked for the CIA for years, and in fact, she was awarded a medal after her tenure. She was awarded a medal at a ceremony where a lot of people got different medals.
Yeah.
A private ceremony, and George H.W. Bush personally gave her the medal, and he was chatting with her and her son afterwards, and you can take this to mean whatever you want,
right.
but she said, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Bush." She said, "I'm so proud of the CIA and what it's done." And he looked over at her and he said, "Lady," or by her name, whatever that was. He said, "Lady, if you really knew what all we've done, they would ride us out of town on a
I've
rail."
heard that.
So you've probably heard that story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that says a lot. And that's the thing about the whole UFO disclosure. If there was a really true UFO disclosure, we actually opened up the books on all this. Not that a lot of this stuff ends up on books. Criminal acts were made. So, a lot of these people are now dead, of course. But in the end, the U.S. government was involved in criminal acts. And will that ever be revealed? I don't think so. Why would they reveal something that incriminates them? And major, we're talking like a coup d'etat of our government if they assassinated Kennedy.
Well, right. In other words, if you notice, that Pentagon report started well after the year 2000 and then stopped a few years ago. Very short time frame. And it didn't really cover any of the major cases. It didn't cover Roswell.
Nope.
It didn't cover any of the big cases that you and I know about.
It doesn't want us to dig into those.
No, the Tehran dogfight incident, which you probably are familiar with.
The CIA was involved in that. They came in and swooped up all the air traffic control data. So it's been documented thoroughly. All the stuff there. Look at the J. Edgar Hoover letters, memos that he got about Roswell and the crash. There's official Freedom of Information Act evidence that these things really happened, that people were involved. There's plenty of evidence, there that they could look into. Nope. Nothing to see here. Move along.
CIA memos. I've got one of them right in front of me, and that was regarding Kennedy and Monroe and all of that. And they just, finally, under Freedom of Information Act, 30, 40 years later, they become available. And the government has no comment, and it's all they consider it out of scope of any official report, and therefore it's like need to know. It's the same story that started 60, 70 years ago. You'd make this a top secret, sensitive, compartmentalized operation like Area 51, which means it's need to know, and therefore you and I and everybody else, we don't need to know, but handful of a few dozen people need to know.
So, I don't know if you covered this at all in your book or not. What was your thoughts on the Bob Lazar story when it comes to Area 51?
Well, I like Bob. I don't think Area 51 would have really come out if it hadn't been for him.
And George Knapp.
The CIA got involved with Area 51. First, the Atomic Energy Commission started. Area 51 came under CIA control in 1955 because they were starting to build a U-2.
Right.
And then after that, of course, they built an advanced version of it that went Mach 3 and 95,000 feet back in the 60s. And I think that was called Oxcart, and they used that to survey Vietnam. They used the U-2 for Russia and other countries. Back then, we had a very limited level of spy satellites beginning, I think, in 59. But they didn't have good resolution until the 70s. Then they had about a meter of resolution, 3 feet. And now they've got resolution, as of 2 years ago, I understand, of maybe, about 10 centimeters, like 3 inches. So, but since they didn't have it, that's what they were using Area 51 for, to give the listeners a little history. So anyway, Bob, he worked at the U.S. Air Force facility known as Area 51. And at the time he worked there, the government wouldn't even officially acknowledge his existence, stonewalling. So he knew some people that got him the job, and he only worked as a contractor. He only worked once a week for about 10 weeks.
Yeah.
He examined an alien craft that ran on an matter reactor powered by element 115. So that was the first major public attention when here's what happened, just to brief your listeners that may or may not all know the complete story. But he said the site outside of immediate Area 51 is called S4.
Right.
It's adjacent to Papoose Lake, south of the main Area 51 facility. He says it consists of concealed aircraft hangars built into a mountainside, and he helped reverse engineer one of 9 flying saucers, which were clearly extraterrestrial in origin. He said they were made out of something like stainless steel, but it wasn't stainless steel. But anyway, so what happened was with him, just to give a little history and a detail, he said the seats of the saucer he saw were chow size. He'd seen alien cadavers of a corresponding size. He'd seen drawings of them.
Yeah.
He also said that while walking down a hallway at S4, he briefly glanced through a door window and saw something he wasn't supposed to. He interpreted it as 2 men in lab coats facing down and talking to something small with long arms. So he was a physicist, at first to begin with, at Los Alamos. And then and he invented a jet-powered car.
Yeah.
And anyway, after here's what happened, to give everybody a complete briefing, because it's a fascinating story. He had a very good friend, and he had a wife, and he told them what was happening once he was there for a short while. And they were, of course, tapping his telephones, and he was under surveillance. And he also told a friend of his, John Lear,
right,
who's the son of Bill Lear, founder of Lear Aircraft. And John Lear is an amazing authority on just about everything, and he has actually flown some of these aircraft. He's got more type ratings than anybody in the United States. But anyway, what happened was he and a close friend of his and John went to the outskirts of Area 51 3 times at night because Bob knew the location of when they were testing these orange discs at night with telescopes and equipment, and they wanted to see them. And John said it was amazing, just the exact spot and location and direction and timing that Bob said go there, and they went there. They saw it, but the 3rd time they got caught by security personnel, and as a result, he was placed on immediate leave and threatened and so forth. In any case, he got in conversations with a news reporter in Las Vegas who gave him his first public interview, and then through a series of events, that interview got attention in Japan, and they got him on a Japanese TV show where he appeared before 30+ million people. Now, he couldn't leave the country because federal agents were prohibiting him from leaving the country because he was under suspicion of whatever. But he did this all by telephone or however they did it back then. And at that point, of course, it became world famous, world knowledge, the biggest story of the decade. And now he passed a polygraph. I think he's telling the truth.
I've always felt he has.
Yeah, I think he might have been set up. I don't know.
See, that's what I wanted to get to. I wanted to ask your opinion on this because we've talked about this on the show. Is one, he knew John Lear because I called into a show John Lear was guest on and talked to John Lear about this. He knew John Lear before he got the job at Area 51. They talked about him getting a job at Area 51. At that time, John Lear was full into the whole UFO subject. And you'd think a cursory background check, the way they really look into people before they let him into Area 51 would have found his association with John Lear. You would think that would have got him disqualified. It seemed like he almost got in too easily. Like this was a setup because they knew he would blab. That's just something I've always felt.
Well, you're very intuitive. I think that's the way they work. I think they said, well, we know this guy's going to talk. We're going to give him very limited information. We know he's going to talk. Let him talk. We will then discredit him, and no one will ever believe anything from that point.
Except for maybe other countries and their intelligence communities that might be listening.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, if you look at people like Russia and so forth, they'll see through it. But the average American, now your average listener is different, but the average American might go along with that psychological disinformation without critical analysis, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just always try to understand, like, if he was set up, what was the total end game or the purpose? And the only thing I can see is like a mind game with your enemies, with Russia, China. Like, yeah, they got this stuff. Oh boy, like we better watch out. I don't know.
To discredit before the general American public and possibly to tell our enemies whatever they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the general American public was pretty much unaware of Area 51 till Bob Lazar, so that didn't help them out. I mean, it put Area 51 right on the map for everybody that didn't even know about it until then.
But maybe they hoped he would be portrayed as such a strange person that they wouldn't believe him.
Yeah.
And this would fully discredit any, I don't know. Who
Well,
knows,
the
right?
other no, this is why I love talking to somebody like you that knows all the history of this, because these are things I've speculated about for years, wondering about. I mean, only other thought I had is that later on they officially got exposed as being real by the U.S. government because of the lawsuits from the people who had worked there who had been injured by the nuclear waste. It was a huge nuclear waste dumping ground. And a lot of people got sick that worked there, and it was a whole lawsuit and everything that eventually exposed this existence. We had to admit it was there. Maybe they got ahead of it. Maybe they knew these lawsuits were coming down the road, and their way of getting ahead of it is just to throw all this crazy stuff at Bob Lazar, let him go out there, talk about it, totally discredit him, and then make the whole thing a joke before the lawsuits came.
That's possible, yeah. I mean, yeah, the environmental problems out there and the lawsuits, and I think Clinton denied it exists, but eventually it was admitted some years back, though, that it does exist. And so, anyway, it is our most top secret facility in the United States. It's huge if you look at the whole area.
Well, speaking of Clinton, I mean, look what his administration did. He gets in, he puts in people in his White House staff onto let's find out about the UFO secrets. There's been a number of admittance to that, and then look at Podesta later on in his role in all this. The Clintons, I'm not going to get into all of it, but they have a history, a long history, a connection with the Bushes too. But they like information. They use information, and what bigger piece of information, for espionage you'd want to have for power is the UFO secret. And I think that his whole trying to send his staff out to try to find out more about this and get answers on it was an exploratory mission, see what information they could get. That's how locked out they are. And I think it continued on into the Obama administration with Podesta and what he did to try to to the stars with what's his name from Blink 182. I totally blanked. But this whole disclosure, I put in quote marks, I think is a little bit of inner war going on.
Yeah, well, Trump was interviewed. Donald Trump was interviewed by his son a couple.
Yeah, I
3
remember
years
that. We
ago.
played it on here.
Oh yeah. And he said, "Well, what do you know about Roswell?" Trump said, "I know about Roswell," but he said, "I can't say anything about it." So that may tell you something right there.
I doubt they would tell Trump. I mean, to a point, all the information. Maybe he got a little piece of it, but I mean, if there's one president you don't want to blab things to, you definitely don't want to tell that guy. He has no filter. I say, yeah, I know people on my show support Trump. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But I think he has verbal diarrhea, and he doesn't think before he speaks. And I think that's pretty obvious. So he's not the guy you want to give this kind of information to. I think if he got anything, it was just a little bit. It is interesting. He is the president that pushed forward the Space Force. They might have given him enough information to get what they wanted out of him, which was the Space Force.
True. That's a very interesting point. He might have been afraid of crossing the line over national secrets by telling too much, too. I don't know. I don't know why he stopped talking all of a sudden. But he intimated he knows a lot. Now, as you know, there was a deathbed confession by one of the principals of Roswell, and your readers have probably, or your listeners have heard that story maybe. And that's very interesting. And I think that confirms that Roswell was indeed true. Of course, they had 2 press releases. One was disinformation, and the real truth didn't come out, I think, until Stanton Friedman, 30 years later, wrote that book in 1980.
Yeah.
And then people finally started talking. About 60 people came forward, and
it was forgotten.
Then,
really,
it was forgotten for decades, and then finally, around the year 2000 or whenever it was, I've got a copy of the affidavit here in my papers somewhere right in front of me. I've got a 2-page affidavit by one of the people at the air base there in New Mexico, and he basically said on his deathbed that, it really was a craft, and there really were humanoids of some kind, and we didn't tell the entire truth, but this is the truth, and this is my deathbed confession told under affidavit. So
there was a lot of other deathbed confessions, maybe not under affidavit, but there was a number of people as they got older into their age that were involved in that event that finally spoke out. And you find out how many of them were like threatened never to talk about it. This was a complete cover-up. And I think they had practice because we've had on a guest, Paul Blake Smith, who wrote a great book about the Cape Girardeau 1941 crash. He's from there. He grew up in that town and discovered it later in his life and wrote a whole book on it. And it's a really interesting story, but it seems like we might have had some practice from prior events of ships crashing before even Roswell.
Oh, right. Yeah. I think there were incidents going back even earlier. I haven't studied them in detail. Of course, there was that cigar-shaped craft around the turn of the century, last century. There was all kinds of things.
Aurora, Texas,
Aurora, was it?
Yeah. Right, turn of the century. And, Jim Mars got heavily involved in that one. And that's a really interesting story because later on, there was supposedly a little alien body still from the 1800s buried in this graveyard. And they were about ready to try to, get permission to dig it up and everything. And somebody else came in and dug it up, and it's gone. The stone marker's gone. The body's probably gone. That it could have been like the first Roswell, literally 1800 time. But they were so worried about it, they sent people out to cover that up.
Here it is. I just found this in front of me. This was an update from the London Daily Mail sometime back. Nick Pope reports that Lieutenant Walter Hout, public relations officer at the base at Roswell in 47, who issued the original press release after the UFO crash on the orders of his base commander, left a deathbed affidavit confirming details of, and it was only opened after his death, and it does say, it's got about 20 points to it, but the critical points were, let's just take a look. It says that I was informed of a temporary morgue set up to accommodate the recovered bodies. I was informed that the wreckage was not hot or radioactive, and there were, let's see what else. I would be allowed to make at least one visit to one of the recovery sites during the cleanup. I returned to base with some of the wreckage. And he said, I am personally convinced that I personally observed a type of craft and crew from outer space. And he said, this statement is to remain sealed and secured until the day of my death, at which time my surviving family will determine his disposition. Signed, Walter G. Hout. Dated December 26, 2002. So that is a deathbed confession.
People don't make deathbed confessions for no, they don't just make up stuff. I'm not make a fake deathbed. Who's going to do that? This is your last will and testament to the earth. Are you going to make a big lie? Are you going to do that? No, this is when people open up their hearts and tell the truth. They're facing their mortality. That's why I take Howard Hunt's, confessions toward the end of his life as seriously. He totally implicates Lyndon Johnson in all of it too. It's totally interesting. But people that try to dissuade you from looking at these deathbed confessions, I'm sorry, I take a deathbed confession pretty seriously. I don't think people play around with that. I think when they this guy put in a legal affidavit, he was very serious. He wanted the world to know that we'd been lied to.
Exactly. If you look at the last, there was that 7 or 8 series episode. It's now probably on YouTube. It used to be on one of the major cable channels. It was made in England, I think. The Men Who Killed Kennedy. You look at the very last episode, which I don't know if they even aired on
I think
cable,
I remember what you're talking about, yeah.
It is on YouTube. That last episode is about the real men, and it is amazing. And I believe most everything they say in there is true. I know LBJ's mistress, she questioned him. The assassination was in November of '63. She was at a New Year's Eve party with him the following Christmas, New Year's at a Dallas hotel, and she said, "I've got to know what happened." And he said, "I wasn't involved in the conspiracy, but he said it was those damn oil people, and he said the intelligence crowd, the CIA."
Yeah, oil people. Yeah, that says a lot.
can't believe it. Yeah.
But I think he took the fruits of he took the rewards of their labor there. He took over. He had a lot of corruption issues and scandals that were coming up as VP.
Was in the cover up. Oh yeah, because he appointed what's his name, Bissell and all of those people to the Warren Commission.
Yeah.
And doing so, he effectively covered it up. Gerald Ford, all of those people knew to keep their mouths shut.
Even Nixon had his suspicions because he was Barry Goldwater right before it happened, and he was in a room of Barry Goldwater and other major Republican players that ties to the military, and they were talking about stuff that he overheard about in his basically taking Kennedy out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people knew about it. I think Hoover knew almost everything.
Oh yeah.
Probably before the fact. I mean, I'm not saying he was involved in the conspiracy itself, but he had knowledge of it. And so I think a lot of those people that possibly met the night before the assassination, maybe in a secret room at whoever's house in Dallas, all the stories on that. But, and they say even Nixon might have been there.
Yeah.
But I think they all came away with a foreknowledge of what was going to happen the following day. I've heard even Johnson started to react and duck 2 or 3 seconds before the shots actually came out. So, that's it.
Yeah, he knew. He had 4. I believe Johnson had involvement. I believe Nixon knew about it. I believe all these people had major players were involved in it. If you look at Oswald, the way they tried to set up the story of Oswald is really interesting because he has ties to even the spy plane being shot down in Russia. And his connections during the Eisenhower administration remember, he went to Russia. He betrayed this country. He went there, left the military, went to Russia, basically, giving up his U.S. citizenship and joining Russia for a few years. Came back with a wife. How do you get back in this country after literally betraying your country, coming back with a wife from Russia, and during the whole communist Red Scare? How did any of that happen? How did he even get back into this country? And then you got him handing out Cuban pamphlets about communism. That they actually put him out on the street doing. It just seemed like such a setup.
Unless he was sheep-dipped by the CIA. Now, we know he was a paid FBI informant. Here's the strangest thing of all of them. In 1963, months and months ahead of the assassination, the CIA later released, under Freedom of Information and so forth, that shot of a, quote, Lee Harvey Oswald double. It wasn't him, but it was a double in Mexico City, meeting with who? Valery Kostakov. Who's Valery? Well, he's Department 13, KGB, assassinations, wet work, all of that.
Yeah.
And who has the power, knowledge, and foreknowledge to do that except the intel community?
Exactly.
And I think the reason they did it was so that because they knew it would become public knowledge a year later, some months later, whatever. And they said to themselves, now any other intel group, any other alphabet agency that sees that will know to, quote, stand down on the information, on any real information, and keep their mouths shut because they don't want to start World War III, because if there's any implication Russia had been involved, that would have happened.
Yeah. It's like they were trying to tie it to Russia and Cuba at that time, or as maybe a backup contingency plan to take blame off of them if any more deeper digging was done into it to go beyond Oswald, But yeah, if they would have proven that the Russians or Cuba was involved, it's war, World War III.
Yeah, LBJ said on one of his final interviews with CBS or somebody, that they said, now, Mr. President, do you think anybody else could have been involved than Lee Harvey Oswald? He said, well, I think it could have been an international conspiracy. So like you say, that was the default.
Yeah, don't mess with us. We have our eye on you. We can implicate you in this, and we can just go to war. Take over Cuba.
Exactly.
Do what we need to do. I mean, look, there was Project Northwood. We had a project in place to blame Cuba for attacks on planes, faking it. That it was an actual plan to do. And rumors Kennedy shot it down. It's like, no, we're not doing that. Because they wanted a reason to go invade Cuba, because they were a threat, because Russia's giving them nuclear missiles to shoot at us.
Yeah, Kennedy was really a great president in many ways. I know, he was just a human being, but
he had many flaws.
he kept us out of nuclear war. I
Yeah,
think many other
him and
presidents would
Robert.
have taken us down the road.
Oh yeah, I mean, if he didn't, people historians criticize him later for having an attorney general as his brother. But if he didn't have Robert Kennedy by his side during that whole ordeal, he would have had no friends, like nobody to watch his back, because the military especially, and intelligence communities were not happy with him. He screwed up the whole Bay of Pigs, in their opinion. He was, cooperating with Russia on way too uncomfortable level for them. And if he was ready to say, let's join up with Russia on the UFO technology and investigating this, that's the biggest secret of all. That's the biggest danger of all, and that would have been justification to remove him from his position.
Right. He was an outsider. He was even coming up against the Federal Reserve by issuing silver certificates and so forth. He was a danger to the intel community, and I think that's I think when he's threatened to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces, that was the death knell of the Kennedy presidency. I think they'd go after him.
To be a fly on the wall, the big top people who decided this. You had to think too. They ought to justify it like, he illegally won the election too. Because if you look at the election, there's a possibility that the election was rigged for him to win through his father and the mafia.
At least 2 states they tipped in his favor. Nixon probably would have won.
Yeah.
Instead, Kennedy won, and then he appoints Robert Kennedy,
who goes out and goes attacks the mafia.
Exactly. They're upset with him, obviously.
Yeah. He didn't make a lot of friends. He sure as heck didn't make a lot of friends. We got to go to commercial break. I'm loving this conversation. We're going to come back and talk more, and we will open up the phone lines. Like I said before the show, at the beginning of the show, guys, the phone lines are going to be different tonight. It's going to be 260-225-9419 or Skype ID Jblandparanormalsoup, not the other 2 lines I usually use tonight. I had some issues, so I just wanted to make sure the guests didn't lose signal, so I kept them on a different line. Hopefully your calls will be all right, but those are the phone lines to call in when we come back from the short commercial break.
Into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do voices from beyond the cold case files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Tonight, our guest is Gerald Eastwood, and yes, we're going down the rabbit hole, because when you get into UFO lore, history, what the government knows, UFO secret projects, JFK assassination, man, it is a rabbit hole. If you've never heard these stories before, there's so much here. And that's what I've always said. True UFO disclosure might be too complicated for any government to actually put forth, because they would incriminate themselves, because they've committed crimes to keep this secret. Our guest tonight, too, I want to talk to him about his ideas about what aliens are. Sorry, Demi Lovato, I call them aliens, extraterrestrials. Or are they interdimensional? That's a subject, I've talked about a lot on the show in a theory. I want to get into that. But we also can hear from you tonight. Now, the phone lines are a bit different. That's why I didn't play my usual Rob's phone line intro there, because I have him on a different line. So the phone lines are 260-225-9419. And let me make sure I unblocked so I can make sure you guys can call in. If not, you gotta get it off the Do Not Disturb. So that's 260-225-9419. It's a Google Voice line. And then there's Skype ID Jblandparanormalsoup. That's Jblandparanormalsoup. Jbland Paranormal Soup. That's a Skype ID. Call in, join the conversation. What do you think? Do you think John F. Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe were assassinated to cover up what they knew about aliens and their existence in the government's secret projects? I think so. Let's get back to our guest. Thanks for hanging in there with us, Gerald. Now, I've been listening to some of your podcasts. You have a podcast on Apple, I saw, and on Spotify. I just find really interesting these topics we're talking about. You cover a lot on there. But one of the theories you go over, I think one of the podcasts I listened to is a number of different famous UFO cases and kind of your theory on how these might be interdimensional. And I always look back to the Roswell case. You talk about the description of the craft and like balsa wood and the way that the craft was. It doesn't seem like it'd be very good interstellar traveling craft, or, you know, even if they had a mothership, it doesn't seem like it'd be the greatest ship. But I always wondered if possibly they, you know, are interdimensional.
Right. Now, most of your listeners know this. There's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the Fourth Kind, and then there's CE5. So I want to explain. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, of course, you saw the movie back in the 70s. That's when you actually see the objects and or their occupants. Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind are abductions, and paranormal cases of abductions are very fascinating. I cover a lot of them in the book. Some of these these bizarre cases end in death of these fourth kind paranormal cases. And then I've only recently this year really become aware there's something called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and I'm not involved with any of this, the CE5 stuff myself, but I've read about it. And apparently there are groups out there, and I read about a group in London or whatever, and apparently they get together, and I don't know how they do it, but within 10, 20, 30 minutes, they're gathered in a field at night, around an historic monument or something, and then all of a sudden, they actually get the CE3 and at least the CE3 experiences. They actually have the objects appear within a very short frame of time. Now, how can this happen is my question. This is one of many questions in my book. How can this happen if these things are traveling millions or billions of light years away? How can they appear 15 minutes after they're summoned by a group like this in London? A group of 20 people gathered at night doing whatever they do to summon them. So this makes me think it's interdimensional, and of course it's not a new theory. It's been around a long time. Operation Trojan Horse and all that, but I think it just makes a lot of sense. I do cover something very unusual in my book, and you may or may not have heard of it. Have you heard about the NSA DIA encounter at all, that story, or not?
I'm not familiar yet. I'm not recalling.
Well, they won't want to read the book. I don't want to get into too much detail. I don't want to spoil the suspense. But it's there are power players in the Pentagon that know about these matters. And just like JFK knew about the CIA's UFO files, there are black ops programs that are funded by pure black ops money that know a lot more and delve a lot deeper into it than this little superficial, what they call it, the Pentagon UFO report. In terms of UFO recoveries, bodies, and so forth, I cover a lot of that in my book. As you know, the real serious cases, as we discussed in this short little 19-page report or whatever it is, the key takeaways are very minor. The Pentagon confirmed at least 3 videos recently released are authentic, and I do some review of those videos in my book. But I also cover alien encounters from other major countries, and I cover some other things, the Pentagon kill shot scenario, how much the deep state is behind this, the CIA and their involvement, and so forth. So as you say, there's many levels to this, and you have to critically think on multiple levels. Almost like an intelligence analyst to really get a firm grasp on what's happening.
And also dealing with the possibility that governments out there, or our government, is putting misinformation out there to put you down the wrong rabbit hole, wrong trail. You know, there's definitely disinformation operatives out there, obviously, that put information in people's hands that were related to the government, but it was totally false, just to throw people off or discredit people.
Well, yeah, the initial projects, what they call them, Sign and Grudge. Project Grudge back in the 50s was nothing, as you say, but a disinformation project. They attempted to disinform us or explain away everything.
Project Blue Book. I mean, that's what I see us this new disclosure project is another disinformation program. Excuse me for feeling that way, but you know, I take my history to heart. I don't feel like I'm going to get anything different. We do got somebody waiting on the phone here I want to get to. We got 480 area code. Who do we got?
Hey, Jason, it's Zach. How's it going, man?
Hey, Zach. Thanks for calling in.
Brother, I just have 2 questions as usual. Hey, Jared, very nice to meet you, sir. How you doing?
Oh, good. Good to hear from you. Thank you.
So my first question kind of piggybacks off of what Jason had just said there related to disinformation and all that. One thing that I've noticed, at least in various forms of entertainment, is that the CIA is usually never portrayed kind of negative light, except for maybe the movie JFK, ironically. My question is, based on the CIA's control within the entertainment media, is this really a form of disinformation to try to get people to see the CIA in a more positive light? Why or why not?
Right. Well, as you know, if you go way back to the 60s, it finally came out, I think, in the 70s that the CIA controlled most of the major media, or they had an operation, I think it was called Mockingbird. I'm not sure.
Project Mockingbird.
They control the major media, and now there's, of course, their charter says, you know, they're not allowed to operate domestically.
Right.
But there's always a way around that. And one of the ways is need to know, and there's other ways, and there's black op budgets. A lot of these programs out there that I haven't even mentioned, but that you probably have heard of. You know what they are is that there's guys out in suburbs of DC. They work in these sub-level office buildings, innocuous office buildings. They wear black suits. They go by the names Mr. Valley or Mr. Baines, not their real names. And these are the operators. They are funded by black ops. They usually work for the DIA or the CIA, and they control black ops units, black ops money, and black ops programs. And this is how the CIA, in my opinion, operates in the United States. Now, if you want to know how they operate internationally, if they don't like somebody in Spain, he's a threat, he's really a bad person, they have a contact at MI6 in London, and the MI6 has a contact in Europe called the specialist. Let's just call him the specialist code, and he will clean up the situation, and it is usually an expensive operation, and they may write a check to fund a bridge for the environment in Spain for $300,000, but that really went to the operation. The operations are normally very successful because they're highly funded, and of course we're not involved. We have plausible deniability. So that's how the CIA works nowadays. As you say, Hollywood tends to give the CIA a good name. It's all powerful, and I think most of the public thinks the CIA is wonderful. And to a certain extent, some of the programs, you know, I think America is at peace because the CIA is at war. But I do think there are elements of it, especially back in the 60s. Now, those type of elements that existed in the 1960s, in my opinion, you can't get away with that anymore.
No.
All those assassinations of the 2 Kennedy brothers and Martin Luther and all those people, you can't get away with those things nowadays with modern forensics and modern technology and spy satellites and all the information. We're now in an information age. They can't get away with much of that now. So I hope that maybe answers your question in a nutshell.
It does answer that question. So really my second question goes back to the concept of Men in Black. Now, a lot of the incidents that I've read about have mostly occurred within the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. What would be the U.S. government, or really any government, what would be today's variation of the Men in Black?
Well, let's see. What do I think about the Men in Black? You want me to tell you a quick story that's very fascinating?
Yeah.
Okay, here it is. Just listen on, because this is a possible explanation once I relate to this very brief story. Okay, Dr. Herbert Hopkins, who was a physician and UFO investigator, he was visited by Men in Black in '76. He had an amazing experience in Norway, Maine. There were two workers who spotted an unusual flying object. They approached it. They were taken in by blazing white light. They passed out. When they awoke, they were a mile down the road. Hours had passed. No recall. They approached Dr. Hopkins. He hypnotized them. The missing time was an alien abduction experience, a CE4, okay? Now, later that night, he was alone in his home with his wife and his children gone. He received a call from a man he didn't know that identified himself as a researcher for the New Jersey UFO Research Organization. He asked to speak to him in person. Hopkins gave him instructions to his house. Now, within about a minute after the call, Hopkins stepped out of his house, turned on the light, and this strange man was approaching him. No car. He was wearing a dark black suit, looked like it had never been worn before, black Homburg hat. When he removed the hat, he had a chalk white face. He said the man had no hair, not even eyebrows. His lips were bright red. He had a strange inflected voice. So he and this man discussed details of the Norway case. At the end of the conversation, this man's tone became menacing. He gave Dr. Hopkins a metal coin and asked him to watch it carefully. You've probably heard of this, but this, to the listeners that haven't, the coin began to blur and then totally disappeared. The man told Hopkins, neither you nor anyone else on this planet will ever see that coin again. We can do the same thing to your heart. Then he told the doctor to stop all research on the Norway case, destroy his records. And at this point, the man's speech became slow like a tape recorder. And the man told the doctor he was running, quote, low on battery and he must leave. He staggered out of the house. He walked towards a bright blue light and got within the sight of it. He disappeared. And Hopkins was so frightened he never worked on the case again. So, I mean, this is a Men in Black case. It's in my book, and there's many others, but all kinds of cases. But so I think in some cases you've got real covert activities, real humans attempting to downplay and get these people to shut up. In other cases, I think you've got something very strange going on. I think this might have been a real experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's the paranormal aspect to the Men in Black that's always fascinating. But there probably there are government agents, I think, that did wear black suits and show up and intimidate people. But the actual like Men in Black phenomenon, like that story, they're not human. There's no way, like you said, his batteries running. They're either robots or something else.
Yes, it's quite bizarre, and it's. But I don't doubt there have been. I've read many cases where, well, as you know, the average American, I think nowadays, and I've read many case histories of this, where the Air Force will send investigators or people in black suits or whatever to people's houses and say, by the way, you reported this. I want more information. I want documents. I want whatever you've got. And a lot of people just trust the government, and they tell them, goodbye. I'm not going to talk to you. Yeah. I'm not going to give you anything. But these people will come to your house, and they basically are very intimidating. And of course, back then at the time of Roswell and so forth, they threw that poor rancher in jail for about a week. He was intimidated. Later, he came into some money and he became wealthy. So, but then he was cooperating. So he was going along with the program. So that's how it works.
Yeah, got to shut people up. Well, thank you, Zach, for calling in, bud.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gerald, for taking my questions. I do greatly appreciate it, man. All right, guys. You have a good night, all right?
You too, Zach. Yeah, see, the Men in Black, that, the way that they just showed up at his house like that, I mean, there's so many instances of this when it concerns the Men in Black, makes it sound like, extraterrestrial, but beyond that, I mean, it's like almost like the CE5 or CE4 or whatever, when they psychically or telepathically communicate and aliens show up. Well, how would the aliens know? Are they monitoring him? No. I mean, somehow they knew and they show up like that. That's pretty extraordinary.
Right. That's quite paranormal. I don't believe that. I don't believe the government has that power.
Right. I mean, I had an incident. I had my friend Terry Lovelace, who's an alien abductee, and we were talking about some stuff we still never discussed on a show over the phone. And then 30 minutes later, I have a helicopter hovering over my house, like for 5, 6, 7 minutes. My wife finally is like, what is going on? I don't know. It's like shaking the house. I open my door, and this thing's flying way too low. Suddenly leaves from hovering over my house and just flies off. I can see its red tail lights right over the tree line. That's like super low. Like, no way. I'm like, I don't know what that's about. And then come to find out, Terry was having these helicopters, and so were some other people he knew that he had talked to had some helicopters show up. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. How would they show up that quickly?
Yeah, you may be on a special watch list. Not that you're in danger or anything, but you may be on a watch list.
Or was it really a helicopter? Is my question. Do they disguise themselves as helicopters? They talk about the black helicopters that show up. Are those really helicopters? I mean, if you're talking alien technology, it can do or stealth or look like whatever. Or maybe it could look like a helicopter. I just found it odd how quickly it could have showed up at my house. Where did it fly from?
That doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
That could be absolutely paranormal.
Yeah. I've had, and again, I can't talk about what me and Terry were talking about, but, I was trying to warn him about some stuff that he was, telling me about. And next thing you know, this helicopter shows up. I'm like, okay. My wife's like, we need a P.O. box. We need too many people know. It freaked her out. It did freak me out, too, a little bit. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was coincidence. I don't know. But, the men in black, they show up with people. Sometimes they show up right after somebody had seen a UFO. Like, how would they know? How would they be there?
Right. Well, very little is released on the market. The public must do its own research and critical thinking. Thus, my book and many others. But the Pentagon tries to go on a scale even larger than. And I do discuss this a little bit. What we're not being told, the kill shot scenario and so forth. Ed Dames and his team in the Pentagon have tapped into the possible future of the Earth, remote viewing, and all of that. The end of the age and so forth. The Pentagon has all kinds of programs, and my book covers some of these programs in detail. But the UFOs are really just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot going on.
Well, I've always wondered about, the classic Reagan speech he gave like 3 times, about how we would all come together if there was an outside alien threat. As what, a one world order? Like, the whole purpose, everybody talks about the New World Order. I mean, maybe we have a deal. Like, we can't join the Galactic Federation until we're one world government. So any ends justify the means for them to make that happen.
Right. In other words, are you saying is the deep state behind some of this cover-up?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, Winston Churchill moved from the Admiralty to the hallowed position of Prime Minister of England during the darkest days of history, and there was a small bar he would attend every night, and after a major air raid one time, he said, quote, unrestricted submarine warfare, unrestricted air bombing. This is total war. Finally, he said, time and the ocean and some guiding star and high cabal have made us what we are. So even back then, Winston Churchill realized that there are forces out there. Queen Elizabeth one time told her butler, Paul Burrell, Paul Burrell was a butler for 10 years, and he was later for almost 10 years butler to Princess Di.
Yeah.
And he told her one time, he said, she told me in confidence, she said, there are evil men out there, evil power out there that is that we are concerned about. So it exists in London and it exists in Washington. It's out there.
Well, look at the history of the Nazis. I want to talk about a rise of evil power, that brought on World War II. Follow the money. Look where all the money came from to fund the Nazis. Like, literally from England. It ends up getting bombed later, from the United States. We gave them money. Some of the major corporations gave them a lot of money and did a lot of experimentation during the Holocaust, too. Follow the money. There was a lot of money to be made. And then look at the Nazis and what they were doing, the secrets later on that they say that they had when it comes to UFO technology, that they had their own Roswell crash and recovered materials and were trying to reproduce it.
Yeah, there's that video on YouTube. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. I won't like the White House, no comment, but I'll say this. I'll just tell the name of it to your listeners. It's called Everything is a Rich Man's Trick. It's on YouTube. It's about a 2 or 3 hour video, and it details what happened around World War I, World War II, the build-up towards World War II, who funded World War II, how we got into it, who profited from it, and who controlled the United States after it.
Yep, exactly. I mean, we gained a lot. I mean, look at Project Paperclip. We, the all that research that the Nazis did, we gained it from it. Look at military-wise, advancement-wise, it happened during World War II.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is a critical point that so few people realize. Operation Paperclip, we all know what that was, but do you realize who really sourced, who funded, who were the people behind NASA in the 40s and 50s? And you're looking at, first of all, you're looking at ex-Nazis, okay?
Yep.
That were
Werner von Braun. I mean,
absorbed here, right? And about 500 people, about 500 German scientists, and who knows what their affiliations and beliefs were, but they funded it. And then you had the Aleister Crowley bunch, which he was if you don't know, he was a major occult figure of the last century. He was into some really strange stuff. And he had some followers. He had a temple, I think, in London, and one in Europe, and one in Southern California. And some of these people were the second group of...
Talk about the Golden Dawn?
Of NASA. And then, I mean, I could just go on and on about the very strange groups that comprised NASA. That's why I think NASA, which many people call never a straight answer, is such a strange organization. These type of people still control it.
Yeah. I mean, what's your opinion? I mean, I hate to throw this out there at you, but what's your opinion about us going to the moon? Did we go? If we went, did we see aliens and they covered it up? I'm fascinated by the early Apollo missions and the moon.
Well, I sat once on a couch in Palm Beach right next to Edgar Mitchell, and I did not ask him the question.
Right.
But, because basically, when you talk to most astronauts, it's like talking to the New York Times. You're going to get a pre-desired answer. But I have done a lot of personal research on it, and there is a group in England that has written a brilliant book about it. I don't think anyone dares write such a book in the United States. I don't like to comment. Here's my opinion on all of that.
Yeah.
In the 1960s, I'll comment on all the assassinations and all the problems back then. But anything too far beyond that, I hesitate to talk about because some of these people are still alive and well, and they don't appreciate the comments. And I'm not that I'm totally behind them, but I see so critically through what has happened. Let's just assume, just between us girls, if the Apollo project was nothing but a Hollywood operation.
Wag the dog.
Like Capricorn 1. You've seen the movie. Okay. Yeah. Let's assume it was like Capricorn 1. Well, you know what? Then the U.S. taxpayers lost $30 billion.
Right.
So I don't want to comment on it. I do know an individual, okay, who's an airline pilot, and he was flying from Japan to where? I think Los Angeles.
Yeah.
When the first Apollo, landed in the ocean, and I can't vouch for what he said. I'm not going to mention his name or the airlines, but he said he happened to see, it looked like an Air Force cargo plane in the distance, drop a capsule out over the ocean, and then the capsule, a parachute deployed, and he said he said it looked like the Apollo capsule. So one of the Apollo capsules, the early ones. So I don't know if Apollo 11 really landed on the moon or not. I tend to think, I'm a photographer as a hobby.
Yeah.
And I know the problems with photography on Earth. And you take a primitive Hasselblad camera in the 1960s and you expose it to the extreme temperature problems of the moon, and you expose the men to the extreme temperature problems, and you take a lunar vehicle that was supposed to that almost crashed 6 weeks before takeoff, and you're saying all of a sudden they did a perfect landing with 20 seconds of fuel. I just don't know about that. All I'll say is my mother didn't believe it, but I have no comment.
my thought on it, we don't want Buzz Aldrin showing up at our doorstep and punching us. But I almost feel like the first Apollo 11 did go. I feel like they did. And they saw something that they had to sign agreements upon, NDAs, that they could never talk about. Because that press conference afterwards, they are so somber. They are so not what you would expect for three men that just went to the moon. And you know, a lot of people point to the Buzz Aldrin interview he did with this little girl, where she's basically, why do you think we never went back? And he goes, well, I think we know why we didn't go back. And people are like, ooh, that's because we never went. That's what he's saying. I think he's talking about more about aliens. But I think we might have faked some after that emission. I think we might have faked almost all of them afterwards.
I think that's a very good analysis. And I do think that on the other side of the moon, and I think there are structures, not only very strange structures on Mars, but on the moon that we cannot see with our telescopes, but they could see, and that they saw when they were there. And I tend to agree with your philosophy. I always
loved the John Lear interviews on Art Bell. And I got to call and ask him about one of his classic interviews on Art Bell about this thing he went on of a tangent about the UFO being the moon being a artificial thing up there in space that's a big soul capacitor. Like our souls go up there and the aliens are in charge of it. And it's like the whole question, do you go to the light at the end of the tunnel? You went on this tangent about it on our Bell show I've listened to 1,000 times. I got to call in onto a show and ask him about it. And he's like, oh yeah, it was me and Whitley Strieber one night before that interview talking about, Whitley's experiences and kind of like shooting what is the purpose of the aliens and their capacity to, maybe even be part of our afterlife and the moon and all that. And that's kind of what put him on that tangent. Not that he had any real proof, but I always thought the theory in itself was a bit interesting. And the moon is one of the most spectacular, unexplained mysteries, in my opinion, floating right up in our sky.
Yeah, if you look at the fellow that I think his name is Hoagland, the other side of
Richard
midnight.
C. Hoagland. Yeah,
Richard C. Hoagland. I've been on his show. Yeah, and and I know his executive producer, his sound guy, very well. He's done a lot of study on the Mars, the faces on Mars, and all.
Oh yeah,
and
I've listened to those interviews.
You've listened to some of them. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge Art Bell fan, so I've heard plenty of Richard C. Hoagland.
So they're specialists on that. I'm not a specialist on it, but he definitely is, and I love his book on it, and so I think he's right on point.
Well, yeah, the structures on the moon. There's so much mystery. I mean, the fact that we have the eclipse from the moon should be mathematically impossible. There's just so much about the moon. I mean, it's right up there. Everybody can see it. That is a mystery people don't realize. That it could be the greatest mystery right up there. It's been with us this whole time. Maybe we've been watched, and there's an alien civilization there this whole time, and it's artificial. That's why I'm fascinated with the moon and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins. I want to believe they went, like in a patriotic sense, what an achievement. So I hate thinking that they didn't go at all. Maybe it's part of maybe that's why I'm biased believing they did go. And if they did, I think they saw something that was and we were warned never to go back. And I
that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And then we, after that point on, every Apollo mission afterwards was just a wag the dog. We're doing a Hollywood effects and saving taking a big amount of taxpayers' money we can funnel and use for other things.
Yeah. So in effect, it was a cost savings. Yeah, because it didn't cost quite that much to produce that. It just cost a few $1 million probably to produce those shows. So after the first one. So I agree totally.
Now, I've seen the whole people try to point out there's a Stanley Kubrick interview where he tries it looks like Stanley Kubrick is saying oh yeah, I faked it, I work for the government. But it turns out that was a mockumentary being made. You can find the whole interview where the guy's leading, if that's Stanley Kubrick, I think it is, into what answers to give, let's say this happened and this, and you can find that full cut. But a lot of people point out that Stanley Kubrick was involved. If it was, there would have to be some Hollywood director involved. It would have to you'd have to have people's involvement that are in special effects to fake this, at least later on. I don't know if Stanley Kubrick was involved. I know that video that's out there, I've had a lot of people cite to me as proof that Stanley Kubrick was involved. Is go look it up. It's a mockumentary. It was a mockumentary right before Stanley Kubrick's death. For some reason, decided to do a mockumentary for some reason, which I do find odd. But if you find the full video, the directors, they're giving Stanley Kubrick what he should say.
Yeah,
So,
the movie The Shining, Jack Nicholson.
The Shining.
Kubrick was a genius, but they say there's
Symbolism,
representations there.
Like
But
when
I
the
don't
little
think
boy on the carpet, when he's playing with the toys, there's something in there, and there's something with the clock that he looks at. I love The Shining. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan. 2001, Space Odyssey is one of my top favorite movies. Did he? I don't know. I mean, we would think later on if they were faking it, they would have to have some kind of Hollywood special effects people involved. And I mean, I go back to Wag the Dog, the movie they did with who was that? De Niro, I think, was in that. Or remember the Wag the Dog movie? Like, you know, they make up this whole fake war with Canada or something. I don't remember what they did, but like the director, I think is De Niro, is like at the end of it is like, yeah, but nobody's gonna, or no, it's Dustin Hoffman. I think it was Dustin Hoffman.
And
Yeah,
De Niro
and Dustin Hoffman's the director's like, well, people got to know my work. Like the ego comes out and they have to like get rid of him. You know, you wonder if any of that went on, you know, to cover that up. If that's the case, I don't know. Hollywood and the CIA and what they're giving us. Like I talk about. Have you ever seen the miniseries Taken by Steven Spielberg?
Taken, yes.
Yes, you have. Oh, I love you even more. I love you even more, Gerald. I bring that up to a lot of people in this field. Like, no, I've never heard of it. I'm like, oh my god. What was your thoughts about that miniseries?
Well,
if you remember,
it was. I don't know. You're talking. Now, wait a minute, just to make sure. Are you talking about Liam Neeson?
Not Liam Neeson. No. Oh darn. You don't know the right one then. No, it was a miniseries on TV. It was like 8 episodes long. They aired it once. It was by Steven Spielberg, and it's called Taken. And you know, Spielberg has a history with Hollywood UFOs and maybe some influence from deep state government, maybe. You know, he's been accused of that, you know, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind being like a reflection of a true encounter that happened, you know, stuff along those lines. Spielberg's always been kind of a suspect in that. Well, he did a miniseries called Taken, and it follows 3 different families. One, a military family that's involved in the Roswell crash. 2, a alien hybrid family from the Roswell crash. Like one of the Roswell occupants actually mates with somebody, and they have like a hybrid. And 3, an abducted family, a family of abductees. And it follows them through the generations, these 3 families. Like for the military. Yeah, have you not seen that one?
No, I haven't.
Oh, darn. You got to check it out. I've told so many. Because they only aired it once. And I'm not saying it's telling the truth of Roswell or what's going on. But there's always a little bit of truth, I feel like, in these movies. These Hollywood directors have some inside access to. You know, and I felt like Spielberg's one of them.
Yeah, they know a lot, and they tell us a lot through symbolism. They sure do.
And one of the things I caught on with that miniseries that maybe hit a little too close to home was the military side. In that, the first, you know, he starts out like a lieutenant colonel at the beginning of Roswell and uses his conniving evil ways to work his way up to being the head of the UFO project, basically working out at Area 51 in the 60s later on. But then he dies and hands it down to his son, who's not in the military. There's no record, you know what I'm saying? And then his son hands it down to his daughter eventually, in a sense. Well, she kills him, not to give spoilers. But there's like this whole, like, it's like later on, like their project gets shut down. The aliens take all back the evidence from them, and then like they fall apart. And later on, the government calls like the son of the general, has all this knowledge. Like they have no records of their existence. Like the government has no records. Like they were so buried that only a few generals in the government knew about this group, this secret UFO group, that had all this alien technology and was involved in it because it was passed down from family members. Basically, that's the way they kept it secret. I always thought that was really interesting. Maybe a secret take from Spielberg on how this has been kept secret.
Yeah, well, he's genius, just like Kubrick, and I mean his theories may be the truth. I mean, there's all kinds. I mean, if you look at the Rendlesham Forest incident, that could indicate it's time travel. There's all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah, we've talked about. We had Nick Redford on here. He believes it was a government psyop in England at the time, maybe. But I've always find that Peddleson, or is it Jim Peddleson? Is that the one that did the? Is that the name of the guy who put his hand on the triangle like UFO and Rendlesham, and then he gets like the coded 0111 like information he wrote down, and then it translates.
Yeah.
It translates.
100. Yeah.
Yeah, like translate like it's time travel, and that's that's again the interdimensional and parallel universe thing I've always said. It's a fascinating idea to me. I mean, think about all the different, especially getting the abduction cases. A lot of people like, oh, these people are kooks, crazy. I know people personally, and I've had my own experiences. I believe the alien abduction phenomenon is real. I mean, you get into the whole MyLab thing, and that maybe the government's involved. I understand that, but I do believe there's an extraterrestrial presence here that's been taking people for a long time. What our government knows about it, I don't know. I think there's a lot of evidence they are very highly involved in it. But people are having these experiences. But they a lot of times, they'll describe gray aliens, the typical what the media has put out there. But there's a lot of other alien species people have said they've encountered over the years. It'd be hard to think that they talk about the vast distance of space. All these aliens, all these different alien species traveling here. Paul Hellyer was saying that there were like 72 species or whatever. It'd be hard to imagine all these aliens traveling here just at this one little blue planet, But if it's interdimensional, parallel universes, now you're talking about possibility of anything coming through. From
some physicists say there's 24 parallel universes. I mean, Betty and Barney Hill. That incident was one of the first books I read.
Yeah, that's a super interesting case. I find it interesting because my own personal encounters, especially recently, I've talked to Terry Lovelace and Jamie about. It's about an alien I saw that very much resembles, as I look back at the Betty and Barney Hill case, not your gray. I even find it interesting how the media's tried to push the gray thing on past cases like Roswell. If you go back to the actual testimony in Roswell, they're not grays.
Really, tell me about that. What's your opinion?
Well, in the original testimony, they were more cherub-like, and they had irises. They didn't have black eyes. They were small cherub-like beings. If you look at the original testimony of Stanton Friedman's research, they weren't like the grays with the black eyes. The witnesses to the event and the bodies, they were like cherub-like. And
I read that book years ago, but I don't recall the exact color.
No, they had like a leathery-ish, like brownish skin, if I remember right, or something along those lines. But if you look at the Betty and Barney Hill case, they almost are like grays, but they have bigger eyes where they have these big eyes that have actual pupils. There's the different descriptions of different kind of alien races, and like I said, that if they have a parallel universes, parallel timelines, there's could be future versions of us coming back into a parallel timeline. They can step on all the butterflies they want. It's not going to affect anything. They're from a parallel future, a possible future of our evolution. They could come in a lot of different forms.
Betty. I think Betty described them as 5 feet tall, gray complexion, like gray paint with a black base, lips with a bluish tint, hair and eyes dark, round faces, broad foreheads, eyes with pupils.
Yeah,
it depends.
But now, if you look at if you watch shows on this, they'll change the look of them to grays. Documentaries. Maybe that's just Hollywood getting things wrong like they do, but it almost feels like there's an intent to always push the gray, as though this is to change the historical nature of it. I don't know, to rewrite it. I don't know if there's an agenda behind that.
Yeah, well, Betty also under regressive hypnosis. Now, she said something unusual. She said that a pair of stars 220 trillion miles away was the base, the Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 reticuli.
Yeah.
They're fifth magnitude stars, and she said the map was multidimensional. The stars were glowing. It was like a hologram, 3 feet by 2 feet. So, and then you've got Travis Walton. He had a very personal a CE4 experience, and I'm sure you've had people talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever had Travis on your show?
I wish. I wish. That's like a dream interview. But I know he's done a ton. But I wish.
Yeah, he'd be a good guest.
Yeah.
But everybody says something to say about him. But that's apparently was very real. They all passed the polygraph. I mean, that's it. And it was a most interesting. I think D.B. Sweeney later starred in the movie Fire in the Sky.
Right. Which in Travis Walton, the interviews I've listened to, is not happy about Fire in the Sky. He wants a new movie to be made. He wants something to be more accurate to his actual experience. They went for like the Fright Fest kind of in Fire in the Sky, and that's not kind of how his experience was.
Yeah, well, I detail as much as I can in the book, but as you say, the Hollywood always exaggerates. Yeah.
Yeah, even look at Whitley Strieber's Communion, the book, compared to the movie they did. You can see. I mean, it was not as much of a change as it is with Fire in the Sky, but there's definitely, I highly recommend reading the book over watching the Christopher Walken movie.
Yeah, got you on that. No problem. So. But anyway, yeah, they're also. I mean, nobody likes to talk about them, but there's bizarre cases of deaths, people, various men
Yes.
killed by these UFOs, especially in South America. It
Oh,
happens a
Brazil.
lot.
Brazil. There's
Brazil.
Yeah. What is that? Oh, what was the name of the island? Corrales. Was it Corrales where they had the attacks on citizens?
Yeah, I do. Well, the cases I cover are Anolama in Colombia, and I cover what else? Ignacio and his wife
Yeah,
returning home.
I listened to that.
Strange death, Ignacio de Souza, and so forth. But
Yeah, he gets hit with a laser beam, right? Like there was a lot of other people that had instances like this. Were getting burned like during the Corrales incident, but there was other instances where people are like hit by a beam and then they get sick and die, like symptoms from a close encounter. Like they're sick from it.
yeah, he got a green light beam shot into his head, and he was never the same. He was in and out of consciousness for about a week. He had burn marks. A doctor said, "Oh, you just hallucinated," but then he was diagnosed with leukemia, and he died months after the encounter, and they didn't understand how the disease spread that quickly.
Right. I mean, you have the famous case. Oh, what's the name of the two women and a child in a car? Was that Texas? Where did it happen? Where they get burned by radiation from a ship. You know, I don't know if that considers an attack or just accidentally in the wrong place at the wrong time, but people have had very sickening personal encounters with these craft and with the beings that are dangerous. And then you talk about human mutilation cases. A lot of people don't know they exist. There are cases of human mutilation from UFOs, from people being abducted and left their body left behind, pretty much like the cattle mutilation.
Yeah, precisely. There was a very interesting case in England, and there was. I'll just give you a quick briefing on it. It was called. I call it the Marconi object. Marconi was a British defense industrial company that took on top secret projects. It was Frimley, England.
Yeah.
It had a testing zone, manufacturing plant, headquarters. Anyway, a security guard was doing night patrol at the office complex. It housed top secret info on Britain's nuclear, sonar, infrared, and so forth. Anyway, while walking down a corridor, he noticed a blue light from under one of the doors. He opened the door, and in a corner, over an open filing cabinet, shuffling through piles of top secret documents, he saw what he described as an extraterrestrial. He said it was humanoid, wore a light uniform with a blue glow. It turned towards the guard, and in a blue haze, it just disappeared. So I think there's like 2,000 cases like that, and you wonder about the hidden agenda. They're not all hostile, but they seem very curious as to particularly our military-industrial complex.
What's your thoughts on the, was it Phil Schneider? Is that the name of the gentleman who Dulce base claimed to have encountered them in, 1979 or something like that?
Right.
Where they like basically amputate, they shot him with a laser. He lost fingers or toes or whatever. And then later on, he suicided. I'm sorry, he was suicided. He literally choked to death with his own catheter tube.
Yeah, I missed your last statement. What happened?
That he was suicided with his own catheter tube. I've seen the autopsy or the crime scene photos from it.
Okay, right. I didn't. You kind of broke up. I got you now. Yeah. I believe he's for real. He states that we've got about 140 deep underground military bases,
right.
dumps, as they call them, and they've been built over the last 40 years. And, of course, we know there's Greenbrier. We know Mount Weather. But he said there's another 100 plus of them, primarily out west.
Yeah.
And the incident you're talking about, he said apparently there was a gunfight at the OK Corral between U.S. and federal agents, and I've seen pictures of him. He obviously has lost part of his hand, and he had a terrible end to his life. As far as I know, he's been terribly discredited by a lot of people. But on the other hand, who could make up such a story? I just don't know.
Why? I mean, attention. I mean, he didn't make any money hardly off of that, and he ended up dying, killing. They say he killed himself, but you can find the photos of his death scene. Beware, they're very, very, very vivid or very gruesome. But he was choked to death with somehow he choked himself to death with his catheter too. How does that happen?
Yeah, and I like these I like these suicides where people shoot themselves 3 and 4 times in the head.
Yeah, right.
That's always good too.
Well, yeah.
So,
I mean, there's the famous case of remote viewer. Very early on, remote viewer, and I'm slipping on the name, who most likely worked with the government, and then he met a suicide end. Oh, what was his name? Dang it, I'm totally spacing on his name. I mean, there's so much people that had information that beat untimely ends. Like you said, maybe they don't do that so much now because forensics, but doesn't mean they still won't. I mean, obviously, some people have gotten away nowadays with talking about it. Bob Lazar, they didn't take him out. I mean, maybe that was on purpose because it was part of disinformation, or Philip Corso. Or other people have come out with information. You wonder why they didn't take them out, but they, with was it Phil Schneider? Or is that his name? I can't remember. That from the Dulce incident, it seemed most important that they make sure he doesn't talk. Like that was a big secret.
Yeah, I have a very interesting story in the book. I have a contact, Dr. Ray Boucher, who has a doctorate in divinity. It's one of the strangest stories you've ever heard, but it's entirely true. And it involves an encounter with NSA, DIA people, Black Ops Project, and 3 fatalities. So it's all in the book, but it's he was a former director for Nebraska for the Mutual UFO Network, and also he was of some church. But he was contacted by the government to consult because they got in, quote, over their head, and 3 of their experimental subjects died bizarre, sudden deaths in the middle of an experiment. So this stuff happens.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, it's a rabbit hole. You start going down to the different projects, government projects, MK Ultra, for one, and maybe their involvement with this, if that's true. What was your thought? I mean, we're going to go to commercial break, so it might be a little bit too much to get into yet, but I've always been interested in the whole Majestic 12 documents. Do you think that was forgery, or do you think those were true documents?
As far as I can tell, I've studied them, and I've asked other researchers who are highly experienced, and including a friend of mine who is an expert in the Kennedy field. But anyway, yeah, I do believe, and I'll let you get into the commercial. I believe they're for real, absolutely.
Well, Linda Moulton Howe, who's somebody else I have talked to about trying to come on the show, I'm just too late for her. Still, Linda, please. But one of the things she always pointed out about those documents was the typeset. Like it matched what they used as typewriters for that time, like the way that the imprints of certain letters they knew that the typewriter would do. Like it matched that forensically. So
right,
these are the real documents. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely did. Yeah, so I don't have any doubt about it. And then you get back to talking about James Forrestal, and actually John Stringer, my stepfather, also did his autopsy. Supposedly he jumped from the 14th floor of Bethesda.
Yeah.
But John said that he looked at the window that he jumped out, and it looked like there were scratch marks, like from fingernails, like he was trying to prevent somebody from tossing him out.
Oh wow!
And so there's many stories.
Wow, that is a piece of history right there. So he actually photographed that autopsy too.
He did They used him to do all the feature autopsies. I suppose they trusted him, and he never would talk to the press. One time that camera crew came all the way from L.A. to talk to him, and he just said no, absolutely not. He was under the National Secrets Act. Now they lifted it when he talked before Congress, of course, in the 1970s, before the House Assassinations Committee. He could say anything, but before that, he would not talk at all.
Yeah, James Forrestal. I mean, that to me is one of the big clues of historically of something amiss in our U.S. government at the time. What was going on? What did he see that made him want to talk? Because obviously they shut him up. What did he know? That's the question. It goes back to the whole idea of what did Eisenhower know at that time too? Like when you get in, when Eisenhower supposedly had maybe contact with extraterrestrials or some kind of communication, and what did he know? And then what his warning when he left office to beware the military-industrial complex. I've always thought these are major historical clues to a shift in power at that time.
Right. So the big question is, so was this suicide, or was it something much more? It was. I think it was May 22nd, 1949, when he died at 1:50 a.m. is when he jumped from the 13th floor of the hospital.
Yeah, they put him in there under like basically observation for depression or whatever, mental illness, whatever. But he, who knows if he was put in there by force or he's, they say he self-admitted himself there, but all of it still, all these years later, brings so much of a cover-up, so much of a conspiracy, and Admiral Hillenkotter, all these people that are involved in the beginning. Like one of my favorite books by Whitley Strieber was a fictional book called Majestic. I don't know if you ever read that. It's his fictional approach, to what happened at Roswell and all that. But I always found his take on his exploration of the idea. How did this originally start? Like, how did this group? And again, Majestic could be passed down. This group of 12 men passed down to their family members instead of a government assignment. Like, oh, you're not part of Majestic 12. No, it's this handed down to this person. Either is in the family or, just recently there's a thing that came out about Einstein's involvement in the Roswell crash, that he had involvement. They've been talking about that. I just saw, it was a Coast to Coast article. I don't know if you've seen that, about recent documents come up about Einstein's involvement. You would think they would reach out to all the major scientists.
Yeah, I have not. But getting to what you say, I think Forrestal, they were afraid he had secrets. He was going to speak out. And in terms of the Majestic 12, and I know for a fact, because I've been in contact with Dr. Ray Boucher, the NSA DIA people he dealt with have a deep black ops program under a different name, but it's the same thing.
It's Majestic 12 with a new name, right?
With a new name.
Yeah, see, that's what I believe. And they exist, but they exist outside the DOD, outside of our government, outside of congressional insight, right? I mean, they have to be outside of that.
Right. He had some contact information from these individuals. He said they presented badges proving they were NSA and DIA, but he had no real. He couldn't exactly call them on the phone, if you know what I mean.
Right. All right. Well, we'll continue this because there's some other stuff, especially when it concerns like the oil industry and their involvement and families. I would like to get into that with MK12 possibly. There's a lot of connections here with how this might be now. These people that are still in charge of this, the energy industry, how they're involved in it. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It may be a big threat to the oil industry if we could have, unlimited energy, so I could see they're interested in this. Somehow private corporations, I believe, are big time involved in this cover up. And we'll get into more of that and take your guys' phone calls. But we're going to go to our last commercial break and we'll be right back. Call in 260-225-9419 or Skype ID Jblandparanormalsoup. Soup. Those are the lines to call in tonight. But we'll be right back after this short commercial break.
Intercepted the transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated. I will hear it.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal and want to hear from leading researchers in the field, join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium, live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
Hi, I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're gonna go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college, I've got a family to support, and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it, but to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all, but he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Heat 'em up.
Do, re,
Egon.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest has been Gerald Eastwood. We're talking about his book, Beyond the Pentagon UFO Report. Going down the rabbit holes, there's so many when you get into this subject. And yes, maybe they're listening now, as I've been hearing people are having trouble on Facebook and YouTube. If you can't get it to work, we are on the Paranormal Radio app. I know you can't see, but it's about the conversation. But Talkstream Live has a Paranormal Radio app. We are on there. You can listen. I don't usually have too many problems with that. I hope not. But you can listen if you can't get it on Facebook or YouTube. We are on Twitch. I don't know. But yeah, it seems like when we get into these conversations, that's when I have hiccups. Wonder why? I don't know. I don't know. But, this is a topic I'm sure the subjects we're covering, there might be some listening NSA ears. I don't know. But this is a topic I love, especially UFO history, JFK history. It's all about the history, and that's why I have a big problem with the whole UFO disclosure thing, because it doesn't cover any of that history. Just wants to talk about, certain incursions that have happened with our warships out in the sea and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, let's talk about all the stuff you've covered up over all these years. See, the thing is once they admit it's real, that they've been involved in it, then that opens up the Pandora's box of questions of their involvement in covering this up and crimes committed to do it. So I'm sure there's people that don't want that to get out, but like I said, that's a snowball effect that'll happen once disclosure really does happen. But let's go ahead and get back to our guests. Oh, and really quick, phone lines are open, 260-225-9419. That's 260-225-9419, or Skype ID, Jblandparanormalsoup. Soup. Call in, join the conversation, but let's go ahead and get back to our guests. Thank you for hanging in there with me, Gerald, for this last half hour. Doing this work, have you ever felt any government pressure or anybody try to silence you feel?
Well, let me say this. For example, the book, The Day After Roswell, you know how integrated circuit chips, lasers, fiber optics were developed. It's a very serious business. And when you talk about what we do, and when you talk about, there was a general back in the 1930s that wrote a book. And he said the motivating factor in society is war. And if you look at the benefactors of war, you're looking at the oil industry, large oil industries, and you're looking at basically defense contractors. And this is what the CIA is protecting. And this is what the groups in London and New York that control the government are promoting, the war powers of the country and our technology and the protection of the technology. So anything that can go to advancing it or protecting it is sacred, and we are dealing in that realm. And then you mentioned earlier that you said, well, maybe some of these oil companies are concerned about possible future discoveries. Well, I'll tell you what, I know for a fact that they have deep-sixed by various means, some of them monetary, some of them possibly other ways. They've deep-sixed anything except the mainstream oil.
Yes.
And you've never got a car that runs on anything except it. So this is all very, very serious business. And so in terms of whether I've ever felt any pressure, I did have one of the strangest things happen in my life a few years ago when I had I won't explain all the details, but for example, I have a PayPal account like most people, business PayPal account. I get some of my royalties on it and so forth. And I was looking at my account. I was just pulling into a bank one day, put it in there, and it said I had about 2,000 times the balance that I knew I had. And I knew something was seriously wrong. And I checked that 4 days in a row, and each time I looked, the balance is 1,000 to 3,000 times higher than it should have been, and it was always a different number. It made no sense whatsoever. Now, I knew for a fact my exact balance, so I don't even know why I was checking it on the ATM machine. I knew, for example, my exact balance, and I knew not to withdraw any more than my real, actual, exact balance.
Right.
And if I had done so, that would have been a very serious infraction. And I'm just wondering who was tempting me or allowing me to do that. Was it because of something I was involved in at the time, which was very high concept and very public? It might have been. So I know what you're saying. I think they will try to set you up. I think they will.
Yeah. I mean, what an easy way to do it. Just throw a bunch of money in there. You're like, oh, yeah, I'll take that. And then next you know, you got FBI agents at your door.
That is very possible. So I am very wary of anything that is out of the ordinary. You have to really utilize your intuition to get by.
Yeah, and like I said, there's also the fact that too they put I mean, there's Freedom of Information Acts have revealed that our government had a high interest in these UFO groups in the 60s, mainly because of threat of the communist kind of like theology or communist ideology, coming from the aliens. That, J. Edgar Hoover worried about it. They put people in with these groups, these, contactee groups and all that. There's been an interest, in people involved with either contacting aliens or alien abductions. Terry Lovelace that I've had on the show, one of the aspects of his Incident Devil's Den book about, what happened to him. He talks about when he's being hypnotized by a colonel in the United States Air Force after an incident he had, and they think he's drugged and hypnotized, but he's with it, and you can hear them talking. Like the colonel's like, "Oh yeah, this is usual with this phenomenon." Like they know about the abduction phenomenon. They have full aware knowledge of it. My question is, if they know people are being abducted, if they are involved with it or not, they have to have a worry that the abductees in some way could be sleeper agents. I mean, look at what abductees are shown. They're shown images sometimes of the world being destroyed or warnings. There's experimentations. There's implants put into them. They have memory. They don't remember being abducted half the time. They could be programmed to do whatever. There's got to be a serious thought by our government. Are these people sleeper cells by an alien invading force?
Yeah, well, you look at, for example, going back a tiny bit in history to James Jesus Angleton, who was director of counterintelligence for decades. He practically held the CIA under his thumb, and he was suspicious of everybody. And he was, of course, a brilliant man, but that's the mentality in the intelligence community, and it still is today. Enhanced interrogation and all of that, and sometimes I guess it works. But it would be nice that if the public could do its own work free of concern on a civilian topic like this. I don't have friends that have been, I must say this though, I do have one friend who's in this field who had a very strange encounter, and I'll just relate it to you.
Yeah.
Now, other than that, I don't have any other reports. I have one single testimony, if you want to call it that. So he was driving a car at a relatively normal speed, and he was passing a green light, under a green light, and another car hit him at full speed, like 40, 50 miles an hour, hit the back of his car.
Oh, wow.
And he was not injured. He was knocked onto the side of the road, and the guy immediately got out of the car, and he was in perfect shape, and he said, "How are you doing?" And my friend said, "Well," I said, I'm okay." He said, "Well, good. We're glad to hear you're doing good." But he said, "It doesn't look like your car's doing too well." So they exchanged insurance information and driver's licenses. The police came and all that. The guy drove off. Guess what? The guy doesn't exist. His driver's license doesn't exist. His insurance company doesn't exist. Now, he could have been whatever, but my friend had previously been threatened about 2 weeks prior by an alphabet agency representative. And I think they were just saying, we're out there.
A warning, to people. That's the thing. It's what I say. I've heard people say, well, like even John Lear say that they don't kill anymore. They don't have to do that anymore. And I kind of agree. I mean, the people, everything's an illusion now. You can't. Who do you trust? Who do you believe? There's been plenty of people who have come out over the decades about their involvement in the U.S. government with aliens and the secret groups and all that. I mean, maybe there's frauds, definitely, probably involved, but there's also people that are probably telling the truth. And it hasn't changed. I mean, the world hasn't changed. Nobody's totally blown their minds or accepted it, and it's mostly general media call them kooks. And so they got control of the media. They got control of it. They don't really have to worry about a Bob Lazar again. I'm saying, who's going to believe him? I mean, he had, Terrence McKenna hacked the NASA database. They went after him. I think that's pretty interesting. He said that there's a secret Navy space fleet, that he got information on. They want him behind bars. That's a little bit telling. But otherwise, they don't take people out anymore. They don't have to. They have control. They have control of the media. They have our attention on so many different things that we're not even paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah, CIA Vault 7. CIA has malware, creates backdoors to your smartphones and TVs, your electronic devices or their microphones, your PC computer is a Windows update, and Skype chats are converted into text and stored on CIA clouds. So in this information age we're in, they have all of this information already. This is widely known and distributed public knowledge. Is it entirely legal? I don't know. But the entire Silicon Valley group has to be cooperating. Cults can be used to carry out assassinations. We've known that for decades. So the world is under major deception. And the CIA should have a mandate to protect us. And it should be engaging in these operations internationally and not domestically.
But there's plenty of evidence that the CIA has experimented on its own citizens. I mean, look at the LSD experimentations in the 60s. That they Project Mockingbird, where they actually had paid journalists on the people on the payroll that are supposed to be journalists, and then probably infiltrated their way into Hollywood. I accuse like the whole secret satanic like Anton LaVey Hollywood, like James Manfield, Sammy Davis Jr. involvement in that group early on in the 60s as an early way of the CIA using somebody like Anton LaVey to get a bunch of Hollywood actors into a secret cult to control them. I think they have plenty of reason to. They have to control the information. They have to control the entertainment industry, and they have to control the news industry. And there's plenty of evidence that they've been doing this for a long time. So don't trust anything you see. Why should we?
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who wrote a book called Spooky 8, and he was a member of a Delta Force back in the 1970s. He spent the last couple of years in Vietnam, and he said he witnessed drug running.
Oh, yes.
Top generals there, top, what do you call them, Asian generals.
Yep.
They obviously had to have the cooperation of either the CIA or some such agency to engage in this activity. And he said they tried to take him and his team out some years later in the 1980s, and they narrowly were able to avert a disaster. And he had to indicate that he had information ready to go to 6 different public sources that it was protected unless he called every 3 months, would go out in order to just keep his life. So it happened.
Insurance liability, yeah. These guys are involved in this, know they need it. They're dealing with most dangerous people around that'll make you disappear. So yeah, you would want an insurance policy like that. Delta Force was not even admitted by our U.S. government until later. And a lot of people say they're a very highly trained, brainwashed group of individuals, like they're Manchurian candidates. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what your friend was like, but not to be messed with. But obviously we can make people disappear if there's no way, if they don't have a way to give themselves an insurance liability like your friend. When it involves this stuff, especially when it's called the drug running. I mean, there's a lot of evidence. I mean, look at the Bush family and their involvement going all the way back to Skull and Bones and the Yale Society. Skull and Bones found the Pierce, the Brown family. That was all heavily involved in opium trade. That funded Skull and Bones, the creation of this secret elite Yale group. It was funded by opium. Go do the history. Go look it up.
They trust each other. They know how to keep secrets. They were in this secret society at Yale, and then when they get in government at top positions, they know that they can be trusted to, quote, keep secrets. And so that's why they, look at how many...
passed by family members.
Yes, and then, by the way, remember Lieutenant Commander William Pitzer? I mentioned John Stringer's friend at Bethesda. I had another guy I know who used to be, he was a Green Beret, and he told a story where he was approached right about 3 months before Pitzer was assassinated. He was approached by an alphabet agency guy, didn't identify which agency, and he said, we need to take out somebody. And he said, well, I take out people all the time. Is he in Europe or Asia or where? He said, no, he's in the United States. He said, I won't take out anybody in the United States. He said, what's his name? He said, the Lieutenant Commander William Bruce Pitzer.
Yep.
So, they had him targeted.
Yeah, if you look at, even in a CIA or a congressional hearing, they showed the CIA had a heart attack gun. They could literally shoot somebody and give them a heart attack, like with be pretty much undiscernible. They could kill people in so many different ways, and you would never know. That's a scary thought, especially in this field of secrets. And when it comes to drug running, I mean, I knew a gentleman who flew out of Mena, Arkansas, if you know about that story with the Clintons and the Bushes.
Sure.
Yeah.
All that group, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I learned about all this when I was a teenager at a coffee place with a guy who actually flew from Mena, Arkansas, and told me all this. That's how I started doing research into it. I'm like, I thought Clinton was a great president, and then I discovered, there's a lot of dirt, and there's a lot of connection between the Clintons and the Bush family when it comes to drug running.
Yeah, well, the CIA groomed Clinton when he was at Oxford. Yeah,
Oxford,
so
yeah,
they groomed him from a young age.
Yeah, what do you call it? He was a Rhodes Scholar.
Rhodes Scholar.
Yeah, exactly. I even read his autobiography, full of crap that it is, just to try to see if I get insight into that. If there's any clues in there. There's not, but maybe there is somebody more smarter than me. But yeah, again, somebody like a control, somebody you can control, and that's what somebody like Clinton, I think, would be. He has a lot of personal, moral issues. Like they could have controlled Kennedy with that back then, because back then the media didn't talk. They would protect the president. But now, well, we can control this guy. He doesn't do what we like. Well, we'll just spill the dirt on all the dirty crap he's involved in.
He was an easy target.
Yeah.
He was easy to control. He knew how to please the public, and he knew how to obey his bosses. That's the deal.
Yeah, and what was going on in Arkansas when he was governor is highly suspect and criminal. And that's the type of person that got the kind of dirt involved in with these deep state characters. And I mean, all these black budgets, people talk about black budget. Well, what does black budget mean? It means they're not getting money that can be traced from the Congress, from our government. They have to make money somehow. How are they going to do that? Drugs.
That's how most of it has been generated, yeah?
Yeah. And you talk about the oil industry involvement. What a better cover than these big conglomerate corporations that are hugely powerful and have shipping, and they have all kinds of resources at hand to make this kind of money and cover it up.
Yeah, Air America. Yeah, the CIA all the way, Air America. Yeah, for example.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Air America is a prime example of that. I mean, there's a lot we can learn from history. People follow the money. Look at what our government has done. It's not conspiracy theory. It's Freedom of Information Act's proven a lot. People should be disgusted by what our government has done over the decades.
Yeah, the nomenclature of conspiracy, I think, was invented probably by a CIA disinformation specialist to encourage people to not believe what is in fact true.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, and if you do get shows that try to put this out in the media, they get shut down. Look at Jesse Ventura's conspiracy show. They shut that.
It's gone.
It's gone. Yeah. And it's hard to find episodes. There's one episode, I will say, that really echoes what we're going through now. I won't get into it because YouTube will shut me down. But just go look that up. There's a certain episode where it really forecasts kind of what we're going through now. And it's very concerning. They shut him down pretty quick. Jake the Snake.
Yep.
Not a Jake the Snake, Jesse Ventura. No, it wasn't Jake the Snake. But, a prominent wrestler, a governor, and, somebody is outspoken. I'd love to... Seal. Yeah, I mean, he knows. I mean, I liked that show, dang it, and I was mad when it was gone. I disagreed with Jesse sometimes. I liked his son.
Yeah, he knew everything. And the major commentators, even on the conservative talk shows, even Newsmax, I think they're somewhat limited in scope as to what they can say. Well, like Tucker Carlson, he can talk about UFOs. I wonder how much he can talk about outside that scope of UFOs.
Right. Not much. I wouldn't trust. I said I don't trust Fox News. I don't trust MSN. I don't trust CNN. I don't trust the talking heads from these shows. And maybe they give us some pieces of information, but there's a lot that they don't ask questions of. And if they were true journalists, they would. A lot of history, a lot of things they could cover.
I mean, you look at some of the top journalists, and they're primetime names, and I like them, but they're just afraid to cross the line.
Yeah, exactly. Because what happens when you do, you're gone. I mean, there's certain people I don't trust that tell you all kinds of things, like Alex Jones. I don't trust Alex Jones. I get he's getting information out there, and more power to him, but I don't trust him. I even his Bohemian Grove documentary, him getting it. How did he get into Bohemian Grove? they went around telling people they were part of the Bush group, basically. But I mean, I'm just saying, I wouldn't trust him either. I mean, who's to say? If you can't beat them, join them, and they can control the whole conspiracy crowd with one talking head.
Yeah, there's two extremes, and you and I are in the middle.
Yes.
We're in the middle of the real world, but there are extremes above us and below us.
Yeah, and like I said, if you can't beat them, join them. Who's to say they don't put their own talking heads out there to fill you with a bunch of, I think, like the QAnon nonsense. I'm sorry, nonsense. I know I might piss off people that watch this show that believe in it, but I think it's nonsense. I think it's a psyop. Yeah. I think they fed you people a bunch of false information to keep you placent and you're and not rebellious. That there's a white hat group out there taking care of everything. No, there isn't.
Yeah, I don't listen to it. It just sounds illogical to me.
I honestly think it was a psyop. I think it was a psyop to get people to be like, oh, there's freedom fighters in the secret governments are helping, and I don't need to do anything. They're taking care of it. It's a secret war.
Like a false sense of security.
Yes, exactly. Trust no one. If X-Files taught you anything, trust no one. Don't trust me. Go do your own research. Don't trust Gerald here. Go do your own research. It's all out there for you.
And when the FBI says to trust us, that's when you don't.
I got plenty of history to say why you shouldn't trust them.
Well,
go ahead.
The deep changes in history and in Kennedy's life can teach us a lifetime of lessons. I'm glad we discussed it.
Yeah, there's so much there in the history, and I've always been fascinated by the period of Kennedy, because it seems that's when the power shifted, when true democracy probably died, in my opinion. If he was
the last guy,
he was definitely personally flawed. Obviously, he was sleeping in the Maryland role. He was sleeping around on his wife. He had medical issues, and he was a human being who was not perfect. But I think I want to believe him and Robert Kennedy, their father Joseph, got them into that position. Got John into the presidency. But they were resentful of their father and what prices he paid to get them there, and they wanted to do the right thing. I don't know if that's true or wishful thinking, but that's how I kind of look back on what I can perceive.
Oh, he had good intentions. I don't think he knew everything once he became president, but I think within 1 or 2 years, he learned everything, and he knows what we know now. And at that point, that's when he got in trouble, because he began speaking everything and speaking out his mind, which, you should be able to do, but that's when he got in trouble. And I think as he became president, he became experienced, he learned everything. And then when he decided to take the right course of action, that's when all the circumstances hit him.
Yeah. I mean, look, putting his brother as attorney general, and then if the mafia put him into that position of power, especially like in the Chicago mob, and then to put his brother as attorney general and turn around and go after the mob, that was to me two sons rebelling against their father. They didn't know what deals that were made to get them where they were, and I think once they discovered it, they're like, we have to do the right thing. I think Robert Kennedy felt that way, and then to think what was involved, with Cuban, Bay of Pigs, and the military's feeling the betrayal that he did, but he really everything I think Robert and John did was to stop us from going to World War III.
That was the major benefit of the Kennedy administration, right? I think they made a mistake going after the outfit. They should have said, let the next administration do that. I think they made a mistake with listening to the military and the Bay of Pigs. So they made a couple of mistakes, but then they spoke their mind, and sometimes you can't do that, especially in that position of power. Go ahead.
Well, they learned that the people they were dealing with are dangerous, super dangerous. They could destroy the world, and I think they wanted to change that, and it cost them both their lives.
Yeah, there are forces. I've written another book. Anyway, there are forces in London and New York that control, the Bilderbergers and all this group, and you just
the Rothschilds.
The Rothschilds, the president cannot just totally abut the system. It's that was the problem with JFK.
And I mean, and even look at Trump. I remember early on when he got in as Chucky Schumer getting on national television saying, you don't mess with the intelligence communities, they'll screw you 6 ways to Sunday. And boy, is that true. And it's becoming more and more evident.
Well, Chuck Schumer's pretty smart in that regard anyway, yes, because that is true. That's an entrenched organization. It's what you call a fuse in Washington. It stays the same. The administration changes, the fuses stay in place.
Exactly.
And we got to work with them.
And like I said, my theory is too on a lot of this is when it comes to the bad guys, these would be the bad guys, people doing wrong, betraying this country, in my opinion. They don't all play nice together either. There's different factions, I believe, involved in this, between like the military-industrial complex, the banking system, the people that are working for other countries, as like China. I think there's other, there's a secret war between a bunch of bad people vying for power.
The Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve is nothing federal about it, but it's controlled by about 20 international banks. And it's a sacred cow. You don't touch it as the president, whereas Kennedy decided to
Greenback.
Do what he thought about.
Yeah, he wanted to put us back on the gold standard. And then remember another president tried to do that. Wanted to keep us on that was Abraham Lincoln. So it hasn't worked out well for him when you go against the banks.
Whoops. Yeah.
History. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you so much for letting me.
This is awesome.
Speak.
I enjoy this kind of conversation with somebody like you that has like such a vast knowledge of the history of it. It's hard to find people to talk about. They're like, what? Really? I didn't know about it. I like talking to somebody. We can get into these subjects, and like I said, we have no proof. There's a lot of evidence. I don't like to confuse, or accuse people like the Bush family or the Clintons, but I mean, just look it up, people. There's a lot of evidence.
Yeah, these are public figures, and there's a lot of research, pro and con, more con than pro, and they've had to work with a lot of factions to get where they are or were, and maybe part of it is the factions. It may not all be the Bush family. It may not all be the family, but there are factions around them which really have not changed their intent or position in the last 30 years. So these are the forces I'm talking about out of London and New York.
Yeah.
That are unheard of, but that exist and that really control the governmental system as we know it.
Yeah, and we have so much to distract us from even realizing who's doing it. Well, Gerald, before we go, I want you to be able to give out any information you want to get to the audience, where they can find your book and any future projects you have coming.
Sure. Well, I do have a podcast. As my friend mentioned, you can Google or Bing the Gerald Eastwood podcast, the Pentagon UFO Report, those keywords, the Pentagon UFO Report by Gerald Eastwood, and that'll take you to my podcast page, or one of them. But the primary books, of course, are all on Amazon, and they're on Amazon on your internet. And my primary book is called Beyond the Pentagon UFO Report by Gerald Eastwood, and it's copyright 2021. It's a ebook, $2.99, or a print book, $19.95, and it's about 170 pages, and it contains the unseeable and the unspeakable and the amazing, and it just has a lot of research in it. So you'll really enjoy it. It's a page turner.
I can't wait to read it. And again, it's an honor to have you on the show. I'd love to have you back on with your next future project or book that comes out. Let me know. Keep in contact, Gerald.
We'll do that. Have a good evening, and thank you again.
You too. All right, guys, that is it for the show. Boy, does it go by fast. All right, next Sunday, guest Josh Turner. Finally going to have him, a.k.a. The Wolf. From Paranormal Roundtable will be joining us next Sunday, same bad time, same bad channel, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Central, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time. We're going to cover, Josh has got we've been talking a lot lately. He's got some incredible experiences I want to be able to talk about, but we'll also open up the phone lines to call in and just join the conversation. Paranormal Roundtable, you can check it out on YouTube podcast. He's going to have a show. He interviewed me for like 3 hours, and he's going to be releasing that, I think, in November. But he's really awesome. I can't wait to have him on next Sunday. See you then. Thanks to everybody who shares out the show. Keep telling people about Paranormal Soup, a place where open forum and guests where we can talk about all these weird, crazy things in life and experiences we have with no judgment at all. Maybe I judge them. No, I don't. But this is an open forum, people. This is why I do it for you, to your voices. All right, guys. See you next week. Have a great night.